What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to Otignal, creator of this beautiful creation. Uzumaki Naruto had been sitting on the top of the one of many trees that were in training ground 7. His eyes were red from crying so much as he had been dealt a blow from his heart. Normally he would be sitting on the top of Yondaimi's head whenever he had felt troubled in his life. But now that was no longer an option anymore, as he had learned that the man he had admired and idolized had in fact been his father, who along with his mother is also still alive while taking care of his little sister outside the village of Konoha. It had felt like someone had taken a hot-bladed kunai and repeated to cut along his skin. Of course he knew from experience how that felt on his 8th birthday when he was tortured in the streets. Now however was a different case because the pain of what he came to know was one of heartbreak. But it was not just his family that he had just found out by accident that they were indeed still alive along with his godfather and grandmother. No, this time it was far worse because the man he had seen as a grandfather had just been lying to his face for so long. Naruto had looked up at the sky that loomed above him while seeing a flock of birds flying over the village as a memory came to him. Flashback. Naruto was sitting on a couch in the Hokage's office as he was drawing in a folder that Sandaime gave while glancing at the aged Kage a few times. Sarutobi had been wondering what the boy was doing as he looked to be taking a serious interest into what he was doing. As much as he wanted to go see what the blonde was doing, that gave the said child a determined look on his face. He had to curse his luck with his paperwork that was looking more like a losing battle. However, he was soon brought out of his losing battle with every Kage had to face by the sound of the small blonde child's voice. Ji-chan? Naruto said as he looked at the elderly Kage with a curious look before Sarutobi smiled at the blonde. What is it, Naruto? Iruka-sensei told me I had a special homework assignment to do in class, replied Naruto as the aged Kage had a curious look of his own at hearing what Naruto had just said. He told me to draw a picture of my family and I drew you and me, Naruto said as he showed a picture of squared-up versions of the two of them holding hands. This made Sarutobi smile at the picture as the small boy who is now hanging off his desk. You know what, Naruto? I think I will keep this picture here in my office from now on and have a talk with Iruka about your special assignment, okay? Naruto had looked at Sandaime for a few moments and smiled at the man as he went back to the couch and went back to drawing on his notepad, then looked at Sandaime. Ji-chan. What is it, Naruto? Sandaime asked Naruto as he saw the boy look a bit nervous at him. Well, did you ever find anything about my parents or family? Naruto asked as his eyes were filled with hope of having a real family like the other students of the academy. Sandaime looked at the blonde for a few moments aside. No, I am still looking, Naruto, he said as he saw the boy look depressed. I am sure that I will find something soon. End flashback. Now the blonde sighed again as his tears had finally stopped flowing from hearing what had happened earlier today. That had been way too much for him to even register what he had heard or if he was even meant to hear it at all. Flashback. Naruto had found himself to be more annoyed than he ever was in his entire life as his own Junin sensei has refused to train him for the Chunin finals. This had happened when he had decided to visit Sasuke in the hospital and he had a feeling that he would see Kakashi there. He had hoped that the man could give some training so that he could defeat Neji in the final rounds. However, Kakashi had told him that he needed to train Sasuke for the finals so that he can beat Gaara. While deep in his mind Naruto did understand that was indeed true after seeing what could have happened to Lee in the earlier rounds. But still he knew that the man could actually train the two of them together as they are both his students. With that, Naruto saw that the Junin had left him there with nothing to even help him in. Uzumaki Naruto, said a raven-masked Anbu who appeared behind the blonde, making the said blonde nearly fall over. Hokage-sama has asked for your presence at once. Alright then, Naruto replied as the Anbu vanished via shushined. Never once in his life had Naruto never ever once disobeyed the man that had been his only family since the start of his life. So the blonde had made his way over to the Hokage's office as fast as he can. The blonde had made his way to the door of the office of his grandfather and was about to put his hand on the door until he heard a yell. The blonde, being ever so curious of what was happening to the old man, had pressed his ear against the door. Are you telling me that you had made some adjustments to the Shiki Fujin on the night of the Kyuubi attack, and not only that, But you have been alive all this time with Kushina in training your daughter, Naruto's twin sister outside the village. Roared the aged Kage as he could not for the life of him understand what has been going on with Minato. Yeah, you see, after the sealing of Kyuubi I had asked Jiraiya along with Tsunade to lie on that night. So that Kushina and myself can train Kimiko to use her special chakra to subdue the Biju's chakra if Naruto had ever lost control of it, said Minato, who looked very confident in his judgment. Kimiko had gained access her special chakra when she had just turned 6 years old, and like I said before, this will help restrain the Biju chakra so that it can go back into the seal. So Minato, you left Yuto train your daughter and at the same time left your son to the wolves. Sandaime said as his eyes be seen with untold fury in them. Minato then looked at Sarutobi with a confused look on his face at what he had just said. No, Jiraiya and Tsunade had left once a month to come back to the village to check up on him. They even trained him with the help of Kakashi, as I was told by them. You know that Jiraiya is the twins' godfather and Tsunade being their grandmother, you know. Well, they have not once ever came back to the village ever. Sarutobi roared again as he stood up from his desk. Do you even know how many times I had to lie to the boy in saying that I did not know his parent and saying that I will find them one day? Outside the room, Naruto's eyes had widened at the last part being said by the old man who he saw as a grandfather. That the old man he had loved his family had known who his parents were all along. Everything had then began to turn dark for the blonde as the pain in his heart had been too much now. So he ran out of the office with his head down, refusing people to see him with tears in his eyes. End flashback. Naruto had stayed in the tree where he could let his tears fall freely as he could not go to the top of the Hokage monument like before. Because it was there that he used to sit on top of the Yondaime's head for comfort. But now he could not ever go back there, not after overhearing what had been said in the office not too long ago. Learning that the man he had admired for so very long had in fact been his father all this time, and not only that, but he had a twin sister named Kimiko along with a mother that was very much alive just like his father. A mental image had taken form in his mind that showed Yondaime living happily with his wife with their daughter. Why did it have to be me? Said Naruto as he looked at his hand. Did everyone really see me as a demon after all? Naruto then remembered all the glares that people had sent in his direction for reasons he did not understand until the Mizuki incident. He did not know how to handle things in with people, as it was only recently that the Ichiraku had stopped serving him. Because the ninjas in the leaf had been going there more frequently and must have said something to the old man to ask him to no longer come by. Though he did notice that their stand was in fact getting more customers after he was no longer allowed to come back. Seeing this made him really happy that they looked to be doing very well for themselves. He then jumped down from the tree as he heard running water nearby his current location, so he had decided to wash his face. The blonde indeed found a small stream of water as he proceeded to wash his face. It was then that he saw his own reflection in the water, that he saw a person that looked like himself, but looked very different. What was that? He asked himself as he kept looking at the reflection who just smiled at him. After being a little freaked out by what he was looking at, Naruto decided to go home for the day. After the blonde had left the area to go back to his apartment, two pair of eyes had been watching the blonde in the shadows. All of them had a knowing smile on their faces of what was about to come soon. However, all two of them had the very same thought going through their minds. Finally, this charade will come to an end. The two figures thought as one. That night outside Konoha, a figure dressed in full black that covered their entire body as they looked up at the moon with a mesmerized gaze as he felt enormous power coming from it. He then felt one person's that is in the shadows watching him as he star-gazed in the cool crisp moonlit night. You can come out now, said the figure in a bit of a deep voice without taking his eyes off the sky. So have you finally awakened? The figure revealed himself to be none other than Orochimaru himself. Yes, and it has been a most stressful slumber. But one I do not regret, since my training with you and had to be awakened only once to use my true power, said the figure. Did anyone see you when this happened? No, thanks to a certain jutsu, my actions went on unnoticed for the most part. The figure replied as he turned his gaze to the snake Sanin. Was he able to recruit the two like I wanted, Orochimaru? Sadly, no, said the snake Sanin. A pity really, as I could given them much more than the other man. The figure said with a bored voice. However, The other one has accepted your offer as he seemed very excited about the deal. Orochimaru said gleefully. Then the mission was not a complete failure, Orochimaru, and has your research made some progress? The snake Sanin looked up to the sky just like their Piran before him was doing as he had a pleased smile on his face. Yes, I plan to use it at the Chunin exams, if that is okay with you. Hey, I suppose it will be a day of remembrance for the people of this village of arrogance. What of Yondaime and Sandaime? The figure had a calm smile on his face that his hood hid his features. They will not be able to do anything to us once we have gained the final element into my plan. Hokage's office. Sarutobi had not been having a good day since the Sacertly return of the Namikaze family since the Kyuubi incident. But now it appeared that Naruto had overheard everything that was being said from his front door. It just made everything more worse than before. As he knew the boy who now hated him for lying about his family and would grow to hate his family for leaving him behind in a village that wanted his blood. He could only wish that when Naruto would come to see him on his own, that he may be able to convince the boy that he had good intentions of not telling him. Sandaime then pulled a drawer open on the right side of his desk as he pulled out Naruto's drawing of the two of them holding hands. However, he was soon brought out of his thoughts as an Anbu making their appearance in front of him that had a certain mask. I forgot Yamato's Anbu mask, sorry. Hokage-sama, I have come back by your request, said the Anbu. Ah Tenzo, were you able to find anything about Orochimaru's whereabouts? Asked Sarutobi as he saw the Anbu. Tenzo kind of shifted. Hi, we had found a very well-laced genjutsu in the Forest of Death, that not even Anko had noticed. The area showed SG-ins that the man had been living in the village for 5 or 6 years. What? Shouted Sadaime as he had risen from his chair, as it already did some of the ninjas in the building as they had all rushed into the office. While the aged Kage ran a hand through his gray hair with a headache coming on him. Orochimaru. Why have you waited at this point in time when you could have placed the curse seal on Sasuke anytime you chose? Just what is it that you are really after? The next day, Naruto had been looking around the village that is his home with so many thoughts going through his mind. He had come to the thought that if he wanted to prove himself in Chunin exams, then he would need a new attire. So he had decided to disguise himself in a henge as he went to one of the many ninja gear stores. He was welcomed into the store happily as he looked around the clothes that looked sturdy for battle. After a long while, Naruto had finally saw an outfit that seemed to speak out to him as he picked it himself, then paid for it. He then had walked out of the store as he came face to face with a girl with long red hair that reached to her lower back. She had a skin tone that almost matched that of his teammate Sakura. He noticed that the girl had dark blue eyes as she looked at him with a shocked expression on her face. This was girl who Naruto had never met was in fact his twin Namikaze Uzumaki Kimiko. Kimiko was dressed in a skin-tight shorts with blue ninja sandals on her feet with white tank top on and wore a orange short-sleeved shirt over it. From the moment she had seen the boy in front of her, she knew this person was indeed her twin brother, Naruto. Of course she knew that he did not know this at this point in time. She had never heard anything about him except that of what Sandaime had told her family that night they made their return to Konoha. Sorry, but I had to get home to get some stuff ready for my training for the Chunin finals later. Naruto said as it was not a total lie because he did need to train. But he also wanted to try on his new clothes as well. Wait, Kimiko said as she saw the blonde turn around. Do you think it would be alright to train with you? Sorry, but I want to keep my training a secret so I can surprise everyone in the finals. Naruto said as he felt a pull deep within himself. Nah, it's okay. Kimiko smiled as she saw the blonde smile back at her. Well, I hope to see you shows your strength at the finals. With that said, the two had went their own ways. With Kimiko had arrived at the home of her father as she had been sitting with her parents while telling them that she had seen her long-lost twin brother coming out of a clothing store after dispelling his henge. They were a bit surprised to find out that he looked a lot like Minato with the exception of having whisker marks on his face and was wearing an orange jumpsuit. She had told them that he was planning to go train himself for the Chunin finals, which had upset Minato a lot as he was wondering where Kakashi was at this moment and why he was not helping his son. He more than anyone wanted to rush over to his son's apartment to help him in his training for the finals and hopefully find out why Kakashi was not doing his job, or his sensei for that matter. But Sandaime had forbidden them from having any contact from Naruto. After he had told them that the small blonde had heard the entire conversation of that day in his office. In his heart he had a feeling that what he was planning may hurt his son in more ways than one. But reasoned himself that this was the right choice to make for both of them, and now he knew that he had been doing the exact opposite of a parent. That was not protecting their child from harm. Instead they had flat out left him to some people who could be called demons themselves. Did he sound angry, Kimiko? Minato asked, who saw his daughter shaking her head. No. But I do not think he even knows what I look like either, replied the red-haired girl, causing her father to sigh as he knew that was true. Do you think he will be able to forgive us, Minato-kun? Kushina asked. Honestly, I would not blame him if he didn't, said the older blonde, as he really found himself to be defeated in this matter. Chunin Finals. Naruto woke up early for the day where everything would be known to the entire villagers of Konohagakure no Sato about his father. He then was told by Sandaime that his match would be last. Thinking that Naruto needed a bit more time to emotionally prepare himself in his match against Neji. Naruto had wanted to argue that he is feeling alright enough to go into his match, only he then saw that he was in no place to argue with the aged Kage. The blonde then looked down onto the arena to see two people were not present for the finals. One being the genin from a new village of Oto, which became Orochimaru's village to get information on the ninja world while staying in his former home. While the other he had expected to be late was Uchiha Sasuke due to his sensei, that is his father's student Hitaki Kakashi. Naruto then decided to make his arrival with his new look as he jumped down to the arena. Everyone had become stunned at the new person who had just arrived in the arena from above. The person had on all black with a matte color face mask that looked like Kakashi's own mask. The coat he wore looked like the one Ibiki wears from T and I Anbu division of Konoha. A.N. Look up Homura from Sekirei. Naruto looked at everyone who did not know that it was even him, with the exception of Kiba, who had figured out who this new person was from his scent, as he looked a bit concerned for his friend. Kushina had noticed his blonde hair that looked the same color of her husband's and knew that the person who is standing in the arena is her son. However, the one she had noticed about her son was his eyes that seemed so very different from what Sarutobi had explained to them. In fact, they looked like that of a person who has killed other human beings before, and it was frightening to her. Minato had similar thought to that of his wife's thoughts were at the moment. He could not get over the face that his son was a carbon copy of himself, with the exception of having whisker mark on both his cheeks that he had seen on the night of the sealing of the fox. However, he then noticed that people were now looking to Sandaime as he raised his hand. Now, my dear people and visitors who have made their way to watch today's event. Sandaime began as he had everyone's attention on himself. Now first I would like to congratulate the finalist for making it this far into the Chunin exams. Now before we begin, I have a few very important announcement to make for everyone present. The first is that the first match between Uzumaki Naruto and Hyuga Neji will be pushed back to the last match, or how I deem it. Now on to the second piece of the finals, which I will now say is that no one is to forfeit their match no matter the circumstances, said the aged Kage as the team of Suna scowled at this piece of news. And finally is that our beloved Yondaime Hokage is returned back to the village, due to making new adjustment to his seal. Hearing this, the people of the village started to gasp for a few seconds, then cheered at having Minato back. While some people were saying that it was a matter of time for the demon to finally pay for his crimes. Now I will let Namikaze Minato say FW words. Naruto only scoffed at the man as he looked a bit nervous at the people who were waiting for him to speak. Well, first of all I would like to say is that, I am glad to be home, said Minato, who then saw the people cheer even more so. Now that is out of the way, I would like to know why this village has not done what I had requested in seeing Naruto as a hero, yelled the angered blonde as he saw the people cringed and shocked at why he would be angry. I have it on good information that you people have done everything you can to make my son's life as miserable as you possibly can. Hearing this caused the people to become even more shocked as their beloved Hokage called Naruto his son. Most people had said that the demon just took the shape of Yondaime to mock them, as they found it to be more fuel for their hate. While Naruto for his part had his eyes closed as he chose to no listen to his estranged father become angry. Minato had continued to yell at the people for doing everything they could think of to break his only son, and from the looks of it, had succeeded in that matter. People then began to feel even more regret for playing a part in Naruto's bad life as they could only feel shame. However, everyone was then shocked that the boy in question had made his way to the waiting area for the contestants of the finals. The Namikaze family were also shocked as their own family members showed no signs of even caring what was taking place. Naruto had taken a seat as he watched the matches go on with no real interest on his part as he watched Kankuro being defeated by Shino. While he was a bit surprised at the outcome with the Abarame's skills and strategy, he could not help but point out the weakness in Shino's ability to fight opponents that will have learned of his clan skills with bugs. As it was very foolish to fight with clan techniques only because of overspecialization would be anyone's weakness against a versatile opponent. Shino for his part thought that Naruto did not understand the ways of a ninja. If only he had not found out that he was poisoned by Suna's puppet player in the match. He then continued to watch Shikamaru's match as he had suspected that the lazy genin was in fact a master of strategy and thought that if he had not applied himself more then anyone he would lead will pay the price. It is a harsh lesson that the lazy genius would have to learn eventually in his life. Then it had came time for his match against the Hyuga prodigy of the clan that had built up in arrogance along with the Uchiha clan. Neji had walked down to the arena grounds that had some debris due to Kankuro's match against Shino. However, Naruto had appeared on the grounds before he even took his first step down the stairs. People were shocked to see that the son of Yondaime had moved so fast that no one could even register it. Neji was shocked as well as he saw that this year's dead last moved faster than any Shunshin he had ever seen. The moment he stood in front of the masked blonde, was the moment that Kakashi had made his appearance with Sasuke who was wearing a new outfit. "Yo, are we late?" Kakashi asked as he looked toward the proctor who had a senbon in his mouth. "Yes, in fact that you are late, Kakashi. If the Hokage did not push Sasuke's match to being last one due to your lateness," said the proctor who is clearly annoyed with the copy nin, while the said Junin laughed sheepishly. "By the way, look in the Hokage's box," said the proctor as Kakashi did what was asked of him then gasped. "S-sensei?" Kakashi said as he then started to shake. "Would you mind leaving?" said Naruto in a voice that was both annoyed and cold toward the Junin as he got the other's attention. Kakashi then looked toward the newly masked blonde who did not even look at him, but kept his gaze on Neji. "Naruto, I see you have taken a new wardrobe now and you look ready to face Neji. I had kindly asked you to leave, Hitaki-san," Naruto said more empty without looking away from Neji who just smirked at him. Kakashi wanted to ask his student about his attitude toward himself, only for the proctor to tell them to leave. The silver-haired Junin then went up to where Minato was sitting as he then noticed the only two loyal Sannin with them. While Naruto had his eyes on the Hyuga before him, he could not help to smile calmly at the prodigy. Once the proctor had started the match, Neji had closed his eyes believing that his match was destined to be his and decided to voice his opinion. "Fate has decreed that you shall lose this match, Uzumaki Naruto," Neji said as he was still smirking as he activated his Byakugan in hopes to intimidate the blonde or make him lose his focus. Only to see that his words or his bloodline had no effect on this person before him. "You must accept that fate had made you into a loser just like Hinata-sama is." Naruto then gave a calm smile at the Hyuga that did not look very pleasing to anyone. "I do not need to heed the words of an insect that has compensated his weakness for a belief that life is controlled by fate. Who does not dare to rise higher to those who had set his life as a servant?" said Naruto as he saw Neji became angered by his words as he saw the blonde vanish again, only to reappear as he was standing on the wall. "Tell me, Hyuga, have you improved your Kaden?" said the blonde as he heard a few people murmur at his words. "I know that all Hyuga have this skill for what they believed to be a perfect defense against their enemies as well as thinking it to be an offense. So I would like to show that your pathetic excuse of perfection in battles have a flaw." Naruto then brought a sword out that was covered from his coat to show it was a normal katan with a strange-looking handguard with dark blue wrapping on the handle. He then placed his hands in one-hand seal and called out the one jutsu in his arsenal since the Mizuki incident. "Taiju Kage Bushin no Jutsu," Naruto called out as over 20 clones charged at Neji with their sword drawn out. Like he had predicted, Neji began to spin his whole body as he deflected the clones. He watched as Neji took pride in defending himself against would-be attackers only to see the blonde still smiling. Now as I have known before with your clan is that you need to be in close range to use your Jukin to close my chakra paths, correct? Said the blonde, causing Neji to become more shocked than he already was. I will award your effort in trying to make me submit to your lowly game of mental breakdown, Hyuga. But so far I am not impressed by your clan or any for that matter of fact, as they all over-spikealize everything and never dare to think outside their world of fantasy. To prove this one fact I will show you my true power that I have kept secret from everyone around me. Since I have only had to use my power only once in combat in my first A-rank mission to Wave, in fact I used it without being noticed. In the cage box, Kakashi had been queued out by his sensei for not teaching his son for the finals, only to be forgiven a while later. As the Junin had explained why he had to train Sasuke for the finals against Sabaku no Gaara. Minato could not really be angry with his student as he too saw that the red-haired boy seemed to be a bit unstable. But nonetheless he was still a bit angry with him for doing what he would advise against in favoritism. But then again he, himself was no different as he had adopted Kakashi into his family as his own son. Kushina had kept her eyes on her son as he had drew his sword out from under his coat as well as she took notice on his words about clans. Back in the arena, bloom with your frozen petals. Shiroi Fuyomira. Naruto said calmly as his katana began to glow a pure snow white that blinded a lot of people for a short time. Once the light had died down, everyone was stunned to see that the blonde was now carrying an entirely different sword that had a pure white blade. The odd feature that everyone saw was that small shards of dark blue icicles were spinning around the snow-white blade. Naruto then held the blade above his body as he was still standing on the wall. Blossom with your radiance. Sumatai Ise Taizen. Naruto said as a few of the shard that are circling the sword had shot out to the arena floor and around Neji, who was confused. However, Naruto was not done as he pointed a finger at the Hyuga. Bakudu number 61 Rikujokuro. Said the blonde as a yellow light flashed a few times at the tip of his index finger that is pointing at Neji. While the confused Hyuga was too busy at the now slowly freezing ground was turning to dark blue ice. He was about to jump to the wall to save himself from who knows what would happen if he stayed. Only to see a flash of yellow from the corner of his eye as he was going to turn to the blonde. This time however felt the top of his body become limp to even face his opponent. He saw the proctor jump onto the wall as the ice-turning ground coming up upon himself had started to freeze his legs in the same dark blue ice. But it did not stop at his legs as it slowly started to creep up onto his chest and looked about to completely take his whole body. Only to stop at his chest, then Naruto had appeared before him with a still calm smile on his face. I shall not be deterred by the words of a weak child who is consumed by his own illusion of life being controlled by destiny or the empty words of a failure. But you have proved to be slightly entertaining to me, so I shall give you a reward. Ensaruto said as he pressed his left index finger on Neji's right shoulder to touch him. Hedo number 4 Byakurai. Said the blonde as thin white beam had shot through Neji's right shoulder that had lighting surge around the beam and blasted through the wall behind the Hyuga. After a while the beam had started to vanish from everyone's sight, leaving all the people shocked. Naruto's sword had then reverted back to a normal-looking katana as he sheathed his sword. Call the match and get some medics for him, if you wish to save this insect's life. The proctor had called the match as Naruto had appeared in the waiting area with the rest of the finalists. Naruto then stood near the rail of the waiting area as he waited for the final match to take place between Gaara and Sasuke. He then closed his eyes for a brief moment so that he relax a moment, only to feel the presence of 7 people who were behind him. Sighs, is there something I can help you with, Yondaime-sama? Because staring at someone from behind is a very poor show of manners. Naruto said as he kept his back turned to the 7 people. Minato could not believe that he was standing a few feet away from his only son who has his back to him. There was so much that he had wanted to say the child that he had made the mistake of leaving behind. He then laughed sheepishly. I'm sorry for being rude, Naruto. It's just that it has been so long since I have seen you in a long time and I had been very worried about you. Well, as you can personally see that is I am just fine. Naruto said as he did not even look at them as he continued to watch the match. And I have become stronger without the need of a family or a sensei in the village as they had refused to teach me anything in the first place. Minato could not really argue the claim of his son as he had personally read reports that were in Sandame's files of the said boy who did not even look at him. He read about how he was thrown out of the orphanage at the age of 4 to live on the street with homeless people. All the way to finding what he could in trash can that are in the back of anywhere to find food. This had went on until he had barely turned 6 years old as the elderly Kage moved him into an apartment. The reports had said that Naruto had grown into a mischief-making ninja who smiled at the smallest things in life. This had not changed once even after the incident with Mizuki telling him that he is the container of the Kyuubi no Yoko in his body. However, the boy that stood a few feet away from him looked to be the exact opposite of the reports. But Minato, being the man he is, wanted to get to know his son no matter how much impossible it looked, because he is a man that never gave up. I can see that you really have become strong all on your own, Naruto. Kushina said as she smiled at the smaller blonde. You might make Chunin once finals are over. As this village is run with cowards who fear what they do not understand and hide their weakness behind their hatred. I highly doubt that I will make such a rank. Naruto said gently toward his family, but the gentle voice was cold. However, such things as ninjas and ranks mean nothing to me as it is only a hindrance in life. So once the finals are over, I will quit being a ninja. This had made the Namikaze family look at the Naruto with looks of shock on their faces along with utter confusion. I know more than anyone has ever let on, Hitaki. To this, Naruto had finally turned around to face the entire Namikaze family. I know that you have taught the Uchiha your signature jutsu, the Chidori. As well that you had copied Rock Lee's movements with your Sharingan and then passed it along to that same Uchiha. Truly such a methods of attaining strength are those of a lowly coward just like those of his now ruined clan. Kakashi was about to make a move toward the young Namikaze for speaking his opinion only to be grabbed by Minato. How do you know all of this? I have no desire to explain myself to the likes of you, Hitaki. Replied Naruto as he looked toward the rest of his family. The entire Namikaze family has gathered for this little even. I have known for some time that you Namikaze-san had adopted Kakashi into your family out of pity on learning the circumstances of his father. Said Naruto as he saw his father looked at with a surprised look on his face. I am also well aware that Jiraiya is in fact the man who named me, so to speak, as I was named after his character in his first book. Then there is you Senju Tsunade, descendant of Shodem, who is also the husband of Uzumaki Mito, who sealed the Kyuubi within herself. Could you imagine my surprise that not only I but the woman who had given birth to me was also the previous Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Yoko. This time it was his mother's turn to be shocked at the words of her only, blood-related, son had found out she was the pervious Jinchuriki. How did you find out? I would like for you to answer me something, Namikaze-san, Naruto said in his calm voice as he looked at his mother who stared back at him. What is it, Sochi? How a person with the same Jinchuriki status was able to live happily? What made you into the woman that could still smile at the world despite the burden she carried? Kushina then closed her eyes as she had met the pervious Kyuubi Jinchuriki before the sealing took place for herself. She then opened her eyes as she had a look of determination in her eyes. The best way to be a prefect host is to be filled with love. I forgot what the saying was. I see. So that is how you were able to live a very much normal life. Naruto said as he looked toward his mother. So what happens when a Jinchuriki was never able to be filled with love and was barely anything to live with? I can see it all now, really, as where your daughter Kimiko has been living a life with a loving family to be with her. While her twin brother had nothing to of the sorts, as he lived on with nothing but being surrounded by lies. Jiraiya was about to say something to the godson he never visited throughout his entire life as he spent time with his favorite student's family. Only to be stopped by Minato hold his hand up with his eyes showing so much pain for his decision on leaving his son. Naruto then took his face mask off so they could see the whisker marks on his cheek. Gaara, also being a Jinchuriki himself, had enhanced hearing due to the Ichibi being sealed inside himself, had stopped fighting with Sasuke. He then turned around to see from the side of the blonde genin had the same eyes of pain and hate inside, that are very much like his own. The red-haired Suna genin then called his sand back into his gourd as this had seemed to confuse Sasuke a lot. Gaara then turned around to the Uchiha with his glass-like gaze. You won this match, Uchiha Sasuke. I forfeit, said the redhead as he started to leave through the arena entrance. With that said, Sasuke had looked up into the waiting area and saw the Naruto with eyes that looked devoid of life. However, the said blonde had vanished then reappeared from behind the Uchiha as he felt his breath on his ear. Always the favorite of Sensei Sasuke, said Naruto as it caused the Uchiha to jump forward. Damn Dobi, don't do that. Sasuke said as he saw his teammate just blankly stare at him with his sword drawn out as it was in that strange form again. Just as then between the two boys a hand had quickly become covered with that same dark blue ice that had appeared earlier in Naruto's match. Sasuke being a bit confused as he saw the entire arena had become an ice prison that kept everyone in place. Just then a black swamp-like circle had formed between the two boys. As a pale hand had emerged from the black substance along with another hand and had begun to rise up from the ground. Long black hair had been seen as a head rose from the darkness with a pale-skinned man with green snake-slitted eyes to reveal Orochimaru. By this time everyone had begun to panic upon seeing the snake Sannin make his appearance in the arena. Sasuke had begun to tremble before the Sannin as Naruto, who still had his blade out, had then calmly smiled at the man. "I trust that you have taken in the sights of this village?" Naruto asked as he then turned his gaze on to the frightened Uchiha. "Kukakuku. Why, of course." Orochimaru replied as he looked toward the blonde, who did not even look the slightest worried about the missing Konoha nin. "Of course I wanted to visit my old training grounds for a bit of reminiscing of my old teammates," said the Sannin as he looked up to see the scowl on the faces of his former teammates. In a split second the three ninja had found themselves to be surrounded by 14 Anbu who had their weapons drawn out. This had caused Sasuke to look all around himself to prepare for the worst in case that he and his blonde teammate were to help on in the battle. However, just as the Anbu were about to make a move on to the missing nin only for blood flying in the air to stain the grounds, Naruto looked at the people who begun to fall down to the grown dead before them. Danzo, who had been silently cursing at Orochimaru for not doing as he was told as he had been in on the invasion plot, only for the destruction of the village so that it would allow himself to seize power to become Hokage. However, the Warhawk was now seething at his plans were falling down before himself. Having enough of this, he motioned for his rude Anbu to move in to kill the man and Naruto while he was at it. However, his personal Anbu had met the same end like the ones that were under Sandame's command as more blood was spilled. Only this time two people had made their appearance in the stadium grounds who stood by Orochimaru's side. One was wearing a black high-collar cloak that had white outlined red clouds on it. The second person looked to be around Naruto's age as he was wearing an Anbu mask as he is covered with a black cloak. Danzo had recognized the mask as it belonged to one of his subordinates in his root division. Uchiha Itachi. Sasuke yelled as he charged his Chidori up once again as his anger had fueled his power once more again. "Today I'm going to kill you." Once the jutsu was fully caged, Sasuke ran toward his older brother while the ground was being torn by his Raiden jutsu as people were in awe. He then thrusted an attack into his brother's chest where his heart is located as he felt the man blood run over his hands. Only to see that Itachi had a small smile on his face as he was trying to figure out what this meant. Until he felt the coldness around his legs for some unknown reason. Sasuke then looked down to see his legs were covered in that dark blue ice that was used to entrap Neji in his teammates' match. He then looked to see Naruto looking at him with eyes that looked far more cold than his older brother's. "Are you preparations ready?" Naruto asked as he looked over to Orochimaru, who had a smile on his face as he nodded his head. "You may proceed," said the blonde, who then finally sheathed his sword on the side of his left waist. Upon doing this one action, the entry stadium were now in shock to see that Kushina along with her daughter were on the arena grounds in front of Orochimaru. But the six people were imprisoned by the same dark blue ice all around themselves as Orochimaru held Kushina by her neck, while Itachi along with the young Anbu were holding Kimiko down in their grip. Naruto himself had begun to walk over to his mother with his hand stretched out over where her heart is located. His hand started to turn into wood as he placed his hand on her right, and once his hand had made contact with her, a bright light had nearly blinded everyone all around in the stadium with the exception of 4 people who did not seem to care. Naruto had begun to withdraw his head as a stream of rainbow-colored chakra began to withdraw from Kushina into Naruto's hand. This process had kept on going for a few more minutes until the last of the chakra had finally been drained from his mother's body. While this happened, everyone could only look on helpless at what was happening to a kunoichi who had been a role model for younger generations. Orochimaru had finally the woman go from his grasp as he watched Naruto walk toward his sister to repeat the process. Once Naruto had finished with his sister, the two people who held Kimiko in place dropped her to the ground looking severely weakened like the older woman. Naruto seeing that had smiled calmly to look at his once family. "I am very surprised to see that you two are alive," Naruto said as his smile did not falter even after his ice prison had dropped to the ground. "I will admit that even I did not know what would happen after I had taken your special chakra from your body, and I am very mildly impressed that you have survived this little experiment of mine. Since you two were the first to live through this extraction process like a few other people who too shared this chakra of yours." Hearing this caused Kushina's eyes to widen as she came to realization that she was not the only one who lived after her country was destroyed. However, she then became sad as she heard that from her son's words that others did not live through his process. She had started to cry out toward her clan that had met their ends at the hands of one of their own. "Ah, it seems that we did not have to use brutal tactic to acquire this little item, as it was something that I needed down the road," said Naruto as he held out Shodem's stone pendant. "It seems that it was a wise choice to follow through with your plan, Naruto-kun," Itachi said as he too was looking at the blonde with calm eyes. "I did not think that Tsunade-san would ever pass her grandfather pendant to anyone. Not after the incident with her brother being killed and then her lover," commented Orochimaru as smiled. "Don't you dare speak their names, you bastard," yelled Tsunade as she looked at the snake Sanin. "It seems like the old witch does not like you talking, much less living Orochimaru-san," the young Anbu said as he looked toward the snake master. "The story of my life," replied Orochimaru as he looked to Naruto. "Which will come to an end today," Jiraiya stated as he was getting himself ready for any kind of a fight. Naruto grinned a little as this had got the attention of the ninjas around them. Sandame did not know what to think at the young blonde's thought, so he asked, "What is that you are finding humorous, Naruto?" "Oh, nothing really," Naruto replied as his grin did not falter once. Until 4 beams of light had came down from the sky and surround the 4 people in a small barrier as he started to lift them into the air. Everyone had looked into the sky to see where the beams of light had came from, only to see a black rip in the sky as it was taking them in while the 4 looked down onto the people. "To think a man of your caliber was not able to see past illusion I have created, Minato-san." Minato hearing this had helped his wife to her feet as they both looked up at the retreating form of their son. "Just what is it that you want, Naruto? If I had any desire to tell you of my plans," Naruto replied as he looked toward his father. "Even if you had somehow to figure out what I was up to, I seriously doubt you would even have the strength to stop me, or much less to even prevent anything to slow my plans down," finished the young Namikaze as he smiled gently again. "Sayonara everyone." With that said, everyone had saw the 4 people had left into the darkness in the sky as it shut itself closed, leaving behind the people of Konohagakure no Sato very shocked and frightened. Sasuke was laying on his bed as he had been staring into space as the events of last 2 days ago had been replaying in his mind. All this time Naruto was in fact stronger than he was and had been faking his foolishness, though he had been suspecting this for some time since the mission they had together back in Wave. There were a number of times when he had seen the blonde with eyes that looked more defined than he ever seen before in his life. Not even Itachi had those types of eyes for as long as he had known his brother. Sasuke then got up from his bed as he walked over to the photo of Team 7 they had taken together. He then traced the area of where his blonde friend stood on Sakura's left side as he was glaring. Sasuke then had put the picture of Team 7 on the table, then placed his hands in a single hand seal. Kai. Once he had done this single deactivation jutsu, his body had started to glow. His hair had started to grow out in the back as it extended to his lower back. His chest had grown out a little bit outwards while his body was becoming slender. Sasuke then walked over to the mirror in his room as he stood in front of the glass. "Today I am no longer Uchiha Sasuke," the girl said as she looked to with more determined eyes. "I am now taking back my true name, Uchiha Satsuki." She then let out a smile. "I hope you don't mind in training another girl, Kakashi?" Satsuki said as she knew the Junin was outside her window. Ever since the events of the Chunin exams, which people had now dubbed as the Bloody Ice Incident, due to Naruto's ability of freezing over the grounds that are still frozen to this day, and no matter how powerful the Kaiden jutsu they use, The ice would not melt quickly as they had thought it would have. However, though was in fact melting, thought it was doing so at a very slow rate. Since that day, most of the villagers along with some of the shinobi of the leaf had found themselves in shame. For either having a part in the things they had done to the son of Yondaime or just plain did nothing of the sorts to help the small blonde. However, the people had become more frightened than anything else because they had seen the power that Naruto was capable of, and the thoughts of him coming back for revenge had been engraved in their minds. Unknown area. A single figure could be sitting on a marble throne-like chair in front of a few people who had arrived in the building 2 days ago. This figure had blonde hair that was no longer spiky as it used to be in his former village. He wore a black face mask that hid most of his facial looks with the exception of his eyes. That were in fact a brilliant bright blue that looked very much devoid of human life in them. He then looked down to see people who stood in front of him. The two he knew to be none other than Orochimaru of the Sannin and Uchiha Itachi of the former Uchiha clan. While another was a boy looking to be the same age as Naruto, who is wearing a blank Anbu mask on his face. The other had grayish hair that is combed back as he had a red 3-bladed Sycthe on his back. Naruto then looked the two new people that had joined him in his plans for a future that will be rooted in his own vision as he let out a kind smile. "I am very pleased that you have decided to join us, Hidan," said Naruto as he looked at the man who grinned at him. "Hey, Itachi had told me that you had a means to make me more stronger than I am now, and with the promise of letting me fight battles where I do not have to hold back like those Akatsuki bitches," said Hidan as he had been annoyed that the organization pretty much told him that he could not fight to his heart's content. Naruto's kind smile had not faltered on his face. "Indeed, I can provide you with what you want, Hidan. I will allow you to fight however you wish to and make you stronger than ever. All that I ask for is that you must follow my orders and you give me all the information you have on your former allies in Akatsuki." "TCH, that's it?" Hidan asked as he saw the blonde nod his head and made the Jashin follower laugh insanely. While Naruto looked to the young Anbu who still had his mask on. "Please remove your mask, Anbu-san," Naruto said as he watched the boy do what he asked. "I am also happy that you have accepted my offer that Orochimaru had extended to you on my behalf." The Anbu looked at the blonde with a blank facial expression as he had very pale skin and short black hair. "Orochimaru-san had told me that he could remove my seal that was applied by Danzo-sama." "You're correct," said Naruto as he looked at the boy. "I will also extend the same offer to you just as Hidan was with the same conditions. Orochimaru had also informed me that Danzo had never given you a name." "Hi," the Anbu replied. "When can I have the seal removed from my body, and if it is possible, could I join you in your battle? I foresee no reason for you not join me," said Naruto, who was left with a thank you from the Anbu. Oi, when can we go making me stronger?" Hidan said as he was eager to be done with new strength as he saw Naruto smile at him. "Very well, Hidan," said the blonde as he got up from his marble throne. "Orochimaru, would you be kind enough to take our young friend to your lab to remove his seal?" Orochimaru had licked his lips in wanting to see the workings of the seal that Danzo applies on his subordinates. "Yes, Naruto-sama, now follow me, young Anbu," Orochimaru said as the Anbu had gone with him out of Naruto's throne room. "Itachi, Hidan, follow me," Naruto said as he began to walk to the back. "We will do the procedure for you at once and you welcome into Kaitengakure no Sato." Time skip. 2 weeks later. A large portal had opened up at the border of Hai no Kuni to reveal Itachi and Naruto himself in the clothes he wore in the Chunin exams. While Itachi was wearing the Anbu-style pants with matching sandals. While he had a sleeveless high-collar shirt with some long black gloves that went up past his elbows. The Uchiha also had a katana strapped on his left hip. Itachi stood by Naruto's side with a dull bored expression on his face. The people of that will be heading to Konoha for aid to help protect their film shooting shall be arriving soon. Naruto had walked over to the Iraq as he had sat himself down in a meditative fashion. "I see. This would be a great opportunity to show our strength of our new village as well as gather strength. Itachi, if our talks prove to bear fruit, then I will want you inside to be in charge of this mission." "Hi," Itachi replied, "but I also want you to find people with potential to join our village along the way and send them to me through a Garganta," said Naruto. "Naruto-sama, may I ask a question?" Itachi said as he was curious. What is it that is on your mind? Why would these people accept our help then have Konohas as they had intended? Naruto had smiled at his second in command. Because we shall give them a test of out strength, and unlike Konoha, we shall take the mission without any means of a reward like most villages who believe that money is the source of power. I see. Am I correct to assume that you wish for me to display a small fraction of my power? Yes, you are correct, Itachi. Naruto answered honestly. I hear that Kakashi had gotten a replacement from the Fire Temple to join his team a week ago. Yes, I too had heard this rumor as well, Itachi said as he watched for the people who were to arrive at any time. I am going to have Hidan make a visit to the Fire Temple to retrieve a scroll that may hold valuable information locked away deep in the temple itself, said Naruto as this had caught Itachi by surprise for a moment. They are finally coming into view now, let us give them a warm welcome, Itachi. The envoy had made its way through a very long journey from their latest area of their shooting with the actress Yukie. Everything seemed to be going smoothly as they had not encountered any hostile people along the way. However, they had came to a stop when two people looked to be standing in their path to reach Konoha. One being a young blonde-haired boy with a black mask with a black trench coat over a white button shirt with matching gloves, pants and shoes, while the other had black long hair tied down in a ponytail who is standing next to the blonde. Immediately everyone begun to think that it was some bandits that looked to steal everything they had as their guards have prepared for a fight. However, the blonde then held both hands up to show that they were not there for any sort of hostile actions. Greeting, I am Uzumaki Naruto and I have come to have a discussion with the actress Yukie, said Naruto as he spoke in a kind tone of voice. Just then a woman with black and blue eyes that looked to be a bit older than Itachi himself had came out of a kurige with a frown on her face. I am Fujikaze Yukie. Now tell me why you are blocking our path to Konohagakure no Sato. She asked, demanded. I hope you do ACCPE. My sincerest apologies, Fujikaze-san, said Naruto as he approached her. But I would like to make a better business agreement than one your producers could make with Konoha. Just before Yukie could say anything to the two ninjas, her director had came out from the back. I want to know how much you will be asking for if we were to hire you for your services. Naruto had smiled kindly at the two again. You can rest assured that in my words that we are not going to do this mission money or any kind of reward. Well, your offer is very tempting, Naruto-san, said the director as he then gave a serious look on his face. But as tempting as it is, would it be any trouble to ask a demonstration of how strong you are? Not at all. Itachi, could you show them your Sero? Naruto asked. As you wish, Naruto-sama, replied Itachi as he held his hand out and pointed his right index finger as what to be a blue-green-like light began to charge at the point of his finger. Then offer a few seconds of the light gathering to the point of his index finger. A large beam of light had shot out from the said finger in a massive blast toward the mountain that was in southern direction of themselves. Once the beam had finally reached the mountain, a burst of blinding light had erupted from the attack. Naruto along with Itachi had CKOSED their eyes so that the light did not irritate their eyes. Once the blast had finally died down, the Yukie's entire caravan, which included herself, mouths had dropped from the display of power. They had saw the lack of a mountain in the southern area where the attack was shot off from the black-haired teen who still had a bored look on his face. Naruto on the other hand still had that kind smile on his face that could be seen through his facial mask. I trust that we have proven that be of use with the level of strength that Itachi has proven, he said as the entire crew gave looks of complete safety that the two ninjas could give. The director had came up to the two former ninjas with a big smile on his face as he shook Naruto's hand. Yes, you guys are definitely hired for the job, and did you really mean that you would do this free of charge? He asked to make sure as the blonde had nodded his head one more time. Thank you. With Itachi here and you not charging any money than what we were going to off Konoha for their ninjas, I think our budget is just greatly expanded tenfold. Again, thank you for helping us. Naruto had chuckled a little bit at the director, who then went look toward Itachi. Itachi, I will leave the group in your care and I will send Sai to aid you in this mission, said Naruto. Hi, Naruto-sama, was Itachi's only reply as he watched his master leave into the forest for him to go through a garganta back to their homeland. Back in Konoha, at the same time of Itachi's Sero, Minato was sitting at his desk as his killing intent was just flooding the entire room of the ninjas and kunoichis who had played a part in his son's abuse. The man had taken out a tri-pronged kunai ready to kill anyone who would be brave enough to call Naruto, demon, in his presence. However, it looked like no one would dare try the chance in front of the yellow flash. Minato had begun to read out his son's medical record for the ninjas to hear. Once he had finished reading the files, he found himself clutching the kunai in his hand in wanting to kill them. However, a powerful shock wave had started to shake the entire village to the point where some buildings looked to be in shambles of the said blow. Once the shockwave had finally stopped shaking the entire village, Minato had a feeling that what had created this power tremor was by natural causes. Anbu, he called out, and 4 Anbu had appeared before him kneeling. I need you to search the entire land of fire to find anything that caused of what shook the village, and be quick. After the Anbu had left, Minato looked at the people who were still in the room with a shocked looks on their faces. You people will assist the Anbu in this mission and do not come back until you have found something for this occurrence. The ninjas had left in a panic to join the search team, then wait for the Yondaime to change his mind. As the said man sat back down in his chair trying to shake this feeling that had come over him, and it did not help matters that today the princess of Yuki no Kuni was to arrive in the village. Elsewhere, on an island northeast of Oni no Kuni, Naruto had arrived back on his island that was nearest to Oni no Kuni, that where one of Orochimaru's safe house was very secretly hidden. The blonde had walked into his meeting room where only he would have to call a meeting. However, he would do no such thing, as Itachi was now on a mission to Yuki no Kuni at the moment to talk of war or anything of that kind. However, he then looked at the displaying garganta that showed 2 girls who had his interest. One being a girl who had a part of her face and her neck wrapped in bandages, who was at the time being violated by an older man. It was not that the girl in being easily completely submissive that had his interest. No, it was the fact that thanks to Orochimaru, who had long abandoned his lab in Sea Country, but still had monitoring seals in the entire lab, that showed him what made the blonde want from the girl. As he watched another video feed from the garganta that showed the girl could transform her entire body to take advantage of water. This was what Naruto found unkey in the standards of water, but also in wonder what would happen if he increased her abilities using his newly team he created from the special chakra of the Uzumaki clan that he now named the Haugoku. Naruto then turned to the next garganta monitor that showed a girl who was training to her body's extent. This girl looked like she was ready to lose consciousness due to overexerting her body, as she had fallen to her knees with a look of self-loathing. Naruto had in fact met this girl on a few occasions, as she really had no ill feelings toward him whatsoever. Nor did she help him when he was playing his role of being a complete imbecile. However, she a great amount potential, as he then watched the girl struggle with her own training. "Ah, you look to be in serious thought, Naruto-san," said a voice who had a hint of joy in its tone, though it seemed to be also a tone of curiosity as well. "Why is it that these 2 girls have caught your eyes?" Naruto had chuckled at what was said to him from the voice. "That is hardly the case, Sai. But it is also half of the truth," said Naruto as he turned around in his seat to face people who were now in the room. "I have 2 missions, one for Sai to help Itachi guard the princess of Yuki no Kuni, while I need Hidan along with Orochimaru to head to the fire temple to retrieve a certain scroll hidden in the temple itself." What could possibly be of worth at some fucking dusty temple?" Hidan asked as Naruto's smile had gotten a bit wide, then replied with, "The true forbidden scroll of sealing that Konoha is so proud of." This had made Orochimaru's eyes go a bit wide in shock to this revelation from his master, as became very interested on how the blonde knew this. "How are you certain of this, Naruto-sama?" Naruto had leaned back in his chair while the ones who served him were waiting for an explanation. "While I had been in my slumber and my alternate self was with the Sandaime in his office, I had to help him with some of his paperwork, which I had found amusing to watch him suffer at the tedious workload. But I am getting off track with the story. Anyways, it was on one the days that while helping Sandaime, he was called in for a council meeting of some unimportance. The elderly man had asked me to place some of the papers in one of the shelves in his office, in which I did. However, while finishing up my work, a scroll had dropped from behind one of his family pictures. The scroll had opened up, and while my foolish self tried to read the entire scroll, he found the task to be more than difficult for his understanding. I however was able to read the scroll with ease through my alternate self's memories. Naruto finished as he told his story and scoffed. To think a ninja who is a cage level would hide something of great importance in such a simple place. But then again, sometimes the most difficult things to find can be right in plain view without anyone knowing the wiser. Surely going after the scroll is of most importance, Naruto-sama. Orochimaru started as he felt there was another reason behind the blonde's plan. Do forgive my questioning of your decision, but I feel that there is another purpose in going to the fire temple. Naruto had shrugged a bit as his smile did not falter. Truly Orochimaru, you are very perceptive, and yes, there is also another reason in going there, said Naruto as he pulled a bingo book out from his coat to show a bald man in the picture with a very high bounty. We will need the money from this person's bounty to help further my plans. TCH, it's like I am working with Kakuzu again back in Akatsuki. Hidan scoffed at his mission. Naruto chuckled at the scythe-wielding man then said, Hidan, I just want this man's body to be recognizable for the ex-conj. However, we do not need anyone else from the temple to report our actions to Konoha. Hidan then grinned at understanding his new master as he knew what the blonde meant. So you're saying I can go all out on the pussies, huh? Do as you wish. Naruto replied to the former Akatsuki member. We just need the body of Chiriku and the forbidden scroll of sealing. 5 days later, docks with Itachi. Itachi was now standing outside Kyoki room where she was sleeping due to overexertion during filming. The Uchiha had his eyes closed as he was standing guard for the woman. This not really much of a problem because he had mission when he was with Konoha that required less sleep or any type of rest. His eyes had slightly went wide for a few seconds at feeling the presence of Sai had made himself known to him. Just then the said boy came up the hotel stairs with as he was smiling that just seemed to make those around himself nervous. However, Itachi was not one of the people to crack under being around a person like Sai as he looked over what the boy was wearing. Honestly, just picture what Jin wears in Hiku Mundo in Bleach, only it being black with white undershirt. He then looked to see the boy carrying a wakizashi on his left. Naruto-sama has sent me as your partner in this mission. Itachi had nodded his head in agreement in having the former Root Anbu as his partner for the mission. I need you to stand guard of this room so I may have some proper rest. Hi, replied Sai as Itachi was about to pass him, but had stopped for a moment as the said leaned in. By the way, we might be having a new member in our ranks. Yes, I have known that for a while now, said the Sharingan user. Has he already sent Hidan and Orochimaru to the temple? Yeah, it seems that our master seems to be a bit in a hurry to get things up and running, Sai said as he walked to the door and created a few ink clones. I sure hope this mission will be fun. With Hidan and Orochimaru, Fire Temple. Why the hell do we even have to walk there? Hidan complained as he was getting bored pretty fast while Orochimaru had a map as he was making sure they were on the right path. It's because Konoha might be on the watch for an Garganta we may open and may have outridden the Fire Temple to be on the watch as well, replied the Sannin. Besides, we are not very far now as he just have these steps to go. Che, finally, Hidan said as he walked in front of the snake excitedly in wanting to try his new strength. Only for the Jashin follower to stop in his tracks to see some stairs that went pretty high above. You got to be fucking kidding me. Kukakuku. All good things comes to those who wait, Hidan, Orochimaru said as he took humor in his partner's misfortune. Fuck you, asshole? No, thanks, I already have a wife, Orochimaru said as the brought scythe-wielding man to stop dead in his track, and this made Orochimaru stop as well to look at the former Akatsuki nin who went wide-eyed. What's wrong? When the fuck did that happen? After a few hours of Hidan asking numerous questions about the snake Sannin on how or who he was married to, the pair had arrived at the front gates of the fire temple that looked to be locked. Orochimaru had looked at the gate with a look that did not look impressed along with his partner, who by now just smirked at the structure as he then taken his double-edged white scythe that had blood-red sharpened blades. However, unlike his old weapon, this new version had 4 blades instead of 3. That went in for different detections at the end of the weapon. His clothes had also changed as he wore a cloak much like his old Akatsuki cloak without the red cloud deskin. His pants were that of looking like a samurai's hakama. His cloak was a bit more opened above his waist as it gave him more ability to move around faster. while his partner the former Konoha nin had on what looked to be of what a samurai would wear. As he had on a white long-sleeve haori that he had on over his black clothes along with a katana with a white hand. That had a hand guard that had silver snakes coiling around themselves. Hidan then walked up closer to the gate as he was just about 10 feet away from the structure. He then gave a waved his scythe in a V motion. As he then watched the gate crumble down before himself while looking pleased with himself. The monks of the fire temple had been training in their taijutsu that is practiced daily in their home. However, everyone had been feeling disturbing feeling in the gustung winds. Sign they heard the news of the bloody ice incident that had happened in the Chunin exams. However, those winds had been blowing more so since yesterday with the thoughts of doom had been taking a hold of them. Now that feeling became stronger when the gate that protected them had came down. So which one of you assholes is Chiriku? Hidan said as he looked around the people of who seemed to become more afraid. While Orochimaru looked among the monks as well. It looked their questions were answered as a monk had stepped forward from behind as the fire emblem on a sash that is wrapped around his waist. Why have you come here to the fire temple, Orochimaru? Chiriku asked in hopes to get information from the two. Last I had heard is that you had vanished along with Uchiha Itachi and Uzumaki Naruto in the bloody ice incident at the Chunin exams. So the pussies of Konoha had named that shit. Hidan said as he was getting a bit more excited. Oi, Orochimaru, is this the guy we're after? Orochimaru nodded his head as he looked forward at the people in front of them. That he is, so be sure not go overboard. The others however are not needed, so do what you want while I get the scroll. Chiriku had paled at the words that the Sankei Sanin had just spoke about the sacred scroll of sealing being in their protection along with killing everyone in the temple. He then got himself into his taijutsu in hopes of stopping the two ninjas before himself to protect the scroll. However, he saw that Orochimaru's body become thousands of white snakes and slithered forward past the monks and himself. While Hidan had changed forward with his scythe in hand to strike the monk down. However, as he was in mere inches from the monk, Hidan then had felt himself being struck by a strong impact of giant fist made of chakra coming from Chikriku. While being high up in the air above the monks of the fire temple. Hidan had thrown his scythe at Chiriku, who was not prepared for the immortal to launch his weapon. Only for it to be a little too late because he had jumped to the right side to receive a wound on his left ankle from the scythe. The wound on his left ankle had damaged the monk enough to render the monk immobile. Hidan then righted himself in mid-air as he fell down to the ground on his feet. The scythe wielder then looked at the down monk as he gave a look of that said he was already annoyed. He then looked toward the rest of the monks who flinched in complete fear at seeing their strongest monk having been defeated. In Konoha, with Kakashi. Hitaki Kakashi was with his sensei and his family as he was in deep thought. On the events of the bloody ice incident that lead to his sensei's son to vanish along with two S-class criminals, including a rude Anbu. However, what had him in deep thought is what his former student's words before he left. On his words of using his true power along with using this power in the mission to wave. Please Kakashi, I need you to think real hard on your mission to wave. Minato said as his voice was desperate for answers. Did anything seem out of place with Naruto at all during that mission? Sensei, I have been trying my best to think of any moment that Naruto may have seemed different. Kakashi said as he looked more down and letting his adoptive father down. Just then Kakashi had finally remembered something from one time in that mission that Sasuke was with the girl Haku in a deep part of the forest. I might have one lead. Really? Minato said excitedly as he shot up from the Hokage's chair. What is it? We are going to have to go see Sasuke, who is at home. Kakashi said as he looked to see Minato nod his head. After a while the two had arrived in front of Sasuke's house as they knocked on the door for a few minutes. However, they were met with a girl that had raven black hair going down to her lower back. The girl had all the looks of an Uchiha female, or rather that looked like a smaller version of Uchiha Makoto. The girl then blinked a few times as her guest looked dumbstruck from seeing her. What do you want, Kakashi? She said as she was starting to get a little annoyed by the two who staring at her, even more so by the blonde. Look, if you're here to stare then by all means go look at a wall. She said as she was about to slam the door. Wait, Minato said as he stopped the door from being slammed in his face. I'm sorry if we're being a bit rude, young miss. It's just that we are looking for Uchiha Sasuke. Is he home? Sighs. I am Sasuke. said the girl, who then saw the two older men looked on with eyes the size of dinner plates. Unknown area. Pain had gathered a stood in his phantom-like state as his eyes showed that he is very displeased. At seeing three members of the group had turned up missing. Those three were in fact our Hoshikage Kisame, Hidan and Uchiha Itachi. They were however now disturbed by the fact that Orochimaru had in fact joined with the Kyuubi Jinchuriki of Konoha. This news is most troubling. Pain said as he was glaring at everyone in the room. How is it that we were not able to obtain this information on the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and him had joined forces? What is more annoying is that with him under the protection of Orochimaru, it may prove to become more difficult to capture him should that man train him. He then looked to Zetsu. Have you found Itachi, Kisame and Hidan? No, we have not found anything of them, said the white half. But we have found these, said the black half as he showed them their hite atesh. As Kisame's looked to have blood stains on the metal plate. I think that Kisame is dead, along with Hidan and Itachi. I see. Zetsu, look for the bodies and get rid of the evidence. Pain said as he felt the presence of Madara around them. Everyone, I shall wait until we can find the status on 3 of our members. So I am afraid that we must go into hiding for the time being. After everyone had left to do as their leader had ordered, Pain, who was currently back in Omegakure no Sato, looked back to see the figure of Uchiha Madara, whose face was currently hiding behind an orange mask that swirled to his right eye. The situation has become problematic, Madara. I am sure that the Jinchuriki will show his face if we attack his home in 5 years, said Madara as his eye glowed. In the meantime we must wait. But I believe that if we target those that are like himself, then the Kyuubi Jinchuriki will reveal himself to save those like himself. With Naruto. Naruto had then looked over some of his plans as they were going to make him do things that his other persona would be appalled at. However, he was now free without the restraints of being what is expected. This one would involve deception of remaining in the shadows and waiting for a precise time to strike. In making assurance that he would prevail to become victorious in both diplomatic and with gaining the people's support on his side. He then looked at the another person through his visual garganta as he looked on with calculating eyes. However, he then looked over another monitor to see the chunks of flesh that is laying on the grounds of the fire temple and came to a new thought in his plans. Hyuga Hanabi, you shall be a great use to me, Naruto said as he turned around and ready to make new plans as he stopped for a few seconds. Perhaps when everyone had returned, we should have some tea together to discuss this new plan. He then stopped as he saw a garganta open up behind himself to reveal Orochimaru and Hidan, who had a satisfied look on his face. We have accomplished our mission, Naruto-sama, Orochimaru said as he looked at the blonde, who nodded his head. Thank you both for your hard work, Orochimaru, Hidan, Naruto said as he, at the former Jashin follower, gave a big yawn. Ah, those weak shits were the first to see my restoration. Hidan gave a smirk. I think some of them even shit themselves. Naruto gave his smile, then looked to the snake Sanin. Orochimaru, I want you to look over the jutsus inside the scroll, and Hidan, I need you to rest for a while until Itachi along with Sai have returned. I need to have that jutsu destroyed before it can become a complete threat to my plans. It will be done at once, Naruto-sama, Orochimaru said as he looked at his lord. Naruto then looked at the snake Sanin for a moment and knew what he wanted to say. Preparations are going underway to bring your wife here, Naruto said as he saw the look on the mont's face become reassured. Oi, just where are Itachi and that smelling prick? Hidan asked in his untamed manner of speaking. Do not worry yourself, Hidan, as their mission is in their capable hands now, Naruto said as he looked to the former Akatsuki member. However, I will need you for another mission, as you immortality will be the greatest factor in this mission, and because you are a new member that has joined my ranks. The village in question will not suspect you being involved with me. However, I would like everyone to be present for this plan to hear their own opinions on this task. So I want you to be on standby. Yuki no Kuni, with Itachi, Sai and Kyoki in a prison. Itachi had been looking around the area of the fortress that held him captive with their mission charge, who is across from himself. The Sharingan wielder looked at the woman with an bored expression on his face. By all means, I should allow you to meet you end here in this place, and like you said to those children who you coldly spoke to a few days ago, to let you become nothing more than forgotten, as you will die here. while Kazuhana will use a double of you to help spread his influence across elemental nations and at the same time bring the image of you down to a level where your very name will be cursed. For death shall follow with your name. Stop, Koyuki said silently as her guard kept on going. But the death that will follow with your name will not be just ordinary people either. Young, old and even children will be killed at Kazuhana's name in your honor. While those who knew you will live with the fact that the real you was a woman who just gave up without fighting back, a COAWRDS path. Itachi said as he then saw a black rat coming toward himself. I said stop it, Koyuki yelled as she banged her hands on the floor. What do you want already? Since I am such a coward as you said. Have some courage in who you are. Itachi replied. It may be easy in giving up on everything as you continue to keep up the facade of your acting career to run away from life. But it take true courage to stand up to those that had hand in becoming who you truly are. Even those children that you had so coldly spoke to about being forgotten as they had were the ones who made you a movie star in the first place. Koyuki looked at Itachi for a few minutes as he stood outside her cell. You speak like you have been through so much. Itachi closed his eyes for a moment. To an extent I do. However, we both know one person who has been survived the depths of hell that is born in the human heart. And just who is that? Asked Koyuki as she became curious. Uzumaki Naruto, replied Itachi as he saw Sai around from some explosions that had erupted in the distance. Though he may have the worst treatment by those in his own village, he had the strength to stand up by himself to keep moving forward with his life, and somewhere along the way of his life, he had come to the thought that he would make a place of acceptance for those like himself. Even to those who are seen nothing more as cattle for selfish village leaders, who see people with bloodlines as nothing but animals for breeding just to keep power for themselves. Hearing this made Koyuki shocked in more ways than one. It can't be true. From another person perspective it may not, said Itachi as he then effortless cut through the prison bars with his katana. Take Konoha's Hyuga clan for example. It is no secret to other hidden villages that the Hyuga clan has two branches in its family, that is the main branch and the second branch. Someone would think that maybe it is a form of keeping the family together, which is entire a small fraction of the truth that the is kept in shadows. Those that are born into the second branch of the family are made into slaves for the main branch of the clan and are forced into submission by having a seal placed on them at birth. But that is wrong, and shouldn't the village leader do something about this? Koyuki said as she walked toward Itachi, who held his hand out. The Hokage of the village can't really do anything on the matter because the Hyuga clan has its own council, relied Itachi as they started to creep along the corridors of the fortress. As for why has no one stepped in to stop such treatment of human beings? Is that the Hyuga are very stubborn people to accept change and wish to keep their power for themselves. However, Naruto-sama has a plan to stop the madness of such people. He must truly be a great man to wanting to achieve such things. Koyuki said as she looked at Itachi with a better light. Are we ready to go now, Itachi-san? Sai asked as he was smiling that kind of creeped the princess of Yuki no Kuni. Itachi then shook his head for a moment as he knew that Kazuhana would surely try to get Koyuki back in his grasps. In thinking by now the princess's uncle had figured that the pendant in his possession was indeed a fake. That was switched by himself personally when Koyuki was passed out on the ship ride. No, we must get to the location where Kazuhana will take the Koyuki-san pendant, and there I will face him alone. But I need you to take out those who will pursue us while getting there. AAA. You're leaving me to fend on my own? Said Sai as he was in a mock-hurt voice. Oh well, I guess playing in the snow won't be so bad. Itachi then turned to Sai. I do have a plan, and I will need you to follow our after you have taken out the rest of Koyuki's uncle's men. Sometime later, outside the fortress, Sai had came into the snowy forest outside the fortress as he saw that Itachi had been defeated by Kazuhana Doto and took Koyuki to a shrine of some sorts. Sai however found himself to be surrounded by two of Doto's men as one of them was flying around him, while the other was standing in front of himself. Ah, you're going to be a little hard to defeat, said Sai then palmed his hand. Oh I know. He then took out a scroll and opened it. Then pulled the end of the scroll to reveal a compartment that revealed some ink while Sai brought out a brush. As he started to draw about 20 lion-looking drawings. Ninpo, Chaoju Giga, called out the young teen as his lion's head jumped out from the scroll and charged to that man in front of himself. The man watched in awe as he had never seen a jutsu like this one before him in using ink laced with chakra. However, while being in that state of mind that had taken his attention off his surroundings for a moment, that he had completely forgotten the oncoming attack. That the lions were already upon himself and charge at him with their mouths open. "Ms. Orr," said the woman who had stopped in midair as she watched one of teammates had been ripped apart by white lions. She continued to watch the lion kill the man now known as Ms. Orr die in a gruesome way. "You son of a urk." Fubuki did not have the chance to finish what she said as she found herself impaled by a sword in her heart. She then looked around as she saw Said was still smiling at her before she had finally drew her last breath. "Well, I should get back to Itachi-san now," Said as he began TP run in the direction of where Dodo had flown off to. He then came upon a mountain path as he felt another presence was lingering around the area and suspected that another one of Dodo's men is guarding the area. His suspicions were answered as he saw a giant tiger made of snow came around the corner to attack him. "Mama, that was rude of you. It was meant to be that," said a man who was wearing the same armor as Mizor and Fubuki. As this new enemy he had met earlier in the trip as he is known as Ruga Nader. "I was expecting the princess to hire some Konoha nins and not some brats. But it makes no difference now as you are going to die now," said Ruga. "Hyouten. Haru Moko," called out Ruga as a larger tiger made of snow shot forward at Sai, who then unsheathed his wakizashi from his right side. "Shoot to kill, Shinso," called out Sai as he held his sword close and the blade had started to grow in length as it had stabbed the snow tiger and continued to extend further. As the blade then shot through the corner of the mountain path where Ruga was hiding. Once the maid had hit its target, Sai had made the blade rest back to its normal state and started to walk to the corner where his dead opponent would lying. Once Sai had gotten close enough to see where his sword had stabbed the man, he could easily tell that it went straight through Ruga's head and through his mouth. Once the teen had seen enough, he left through using a new speed technique that he learned under Itachi. With Duto and Koyuki had watched her uncle take the pendant that her father had given to her when she was a child to a small altar. However, she was shocked to find that it was a key to start the heating system to melt the snow of her country. She then saw the look of pure rage on her uncle Dodo's face at learning the truth of the family treasure. "There are many treasures in the world, Dodo-san," said a voice coming from Koyuki as she places a hairpin down on the ground. That exploded in a cloud of smoke that quickly vanished to reveal Uchiha Itachi with his sword drawn out. However, some of those treasures are not always things that are material value and are worth more than money, said Itachi as he stepped close to Dodo before he could even blink. Itachi then used this opening as she slashed his sword upward diagonally left in cutting Dodo's armor open. As he then followed up with a kick on the man's chest in making Dodo cough up some blood from the blow. Itachi then saw Dodo was knocked back about 50 yards away from himself and saw the man getting ready to use a jutsu to attack. The Sharingan wielder then sighed as he pointed his finger toward Duto as he began to collect energy. Koyuki, who was watching the battle from behind Itachi, knew what the man was going to do, as she had seen the attack beforehand back in Hai no Kuni, when they first met Itachi, who was with Naruto in displaying his power. She then was pulled from her thoughts as she saw her uncle used a jutsu that shot black dragons from both his arms and started to race at the Uchiha. While Itachi himself did not look to be bothered in the least bit of the attack that was coming at himself. "Sero," Itachi said as the same powerful blast shot out toward the dragons and Dodo himself, before obliterating both the jutsu along with the caster in a green blast that cracked the ice on one of the 4 pillars that started to have a rainbow light coming from the sun. Once the Sero from Itachi had died down, a projection was shown by one other the heating system pillars to show a child Koyuki talking with her late father. Then it mentioned that she not only wanted to be just a princess, but an actress as well. "That is an aspiring dream to obtain, Koyuki-sama," said a voice from behind as this made everyone including the newly arrived Sai to look behind the princess to show Uzumaki Naruto. Itachi had walked over to his mission charge just as Sai did from the left while Koyuki looked at the blonde. "Hi, it may be a bit difficult to do, but I can't allow myself to be a coward, right?" Koyuki said as she looked at Itachi, who nodded his head after blinking a few times. "Itachi told me that you wish to set something's right in the world we live in." "Indeed," replied Naruto. There are many things that I wish to change in the world so that many do not have to have the need to suffer for others. However, I would like to have your support in making that dream realized. Because I know that I cannot do this alone. Koyuki then extended her hand to Naruto as she smiled at him. You do not need to say any more, Naruto-sama. Because from here on out Yuki no Kuni will support your ideals, starting now. Naruto then took her hand as they shook in agreement, as he had secured another ally for himself in the future. Naruto was looking around the village in that they had just saved. The blonde Jinchuriki could only scoff at the Kazuhana Dotu's reasoning for wanting material treasure. While he was walking around the village, he could sense people with very high power that seemed to be laying dormant within themselves. Which was why he had sent Itachi along with Sai to search for such people in the village. Though his masked face did not show it or could be seen. Naruto found himself to be relaxed in the village of Yuki no Kuni and wondered if they had a tea shop around. After some time of wandering the village, the blonde then finally came to a tea shop. However, just as he was about to walk into the shop, he had noticed a girl that was the same age as himself looking desperately inside. From the way her clothes looked and a lack of appropriate sandals, the masked blonde could tell that she was a girl from the streets in search of food. Naruto then walked up to her from behind the girl who had shoulder-length black hair. "Are you hungry?" asked Naruto as he startled the girl in making her turn around. Naruto was then found himself looking into dark blue eyes. "I said, are you hungry?" repeated the blonde. "No," replied the girl as she said quietly while looking on the ground. "I was just seeing if I can see what they have that I can buy. Besides, the food here does not look so good at all." However, the moment these words were said, her stomach growled as she blushed in embarrassment. "Would you like to join me for a meal?" Naruto asked kindly. Konoha, council room. Minato was sporting a headache as he was new to being in the council room in the Hokage's seat. People were shouting about the events that had the bloody ice incident was still a fresh wound. However, the new subject that was discovered by the search party he had sent to find the cause of the earthquake. That was just revealed to be or may have been caused by Uchiha Itachi along with his son Naruto. As one of the Inuzuka clan members were a part of the search team. As they picked up the two scents in the area of the blast from the where it looked to was emanated from. However, they also had discovered a few of smells that were not there too and thought a lot on why the actress had never arrived in Konoha. He then came to the thought that, "Silence!" Minato yelled while lacing it with killing intent as it had his desired effect. "I have come to the thought that Naruto along with Itachi may have encountered the people who were to come to Konoha to hire us for an escort mission. But now I have come to the assumption that these two must have done something to these people. We should put your son in the bingo book with a capture or kill on sight order," Danzo said as he looked impassive. "The Jinchuriki has grown far too dangerous to be left alive. As every one of you all saw his power at the Chunin exams. This had gotten some nods from the civilian side. Peefed, like that will do any good," scoffed Inuzuka Sume said as she saw the Warhawk frown at her. "The last time the council had gone with one of your plans, it backfired in your face to stunt the growth of the boy. It was the best choice this council has made," Danzo said as he waved her off. "Had the boy was given to me from the very start to be trained under my eye, then there would never have been a bloody ice incident. Naruto is not an object or weapon that can be used or put aside like a weapon," roared Minato. "When I had sealed the Kyuubi inside him, I had asked my people to see him as a hero, one bigger than that of me. However, you people had decided to take your losses on a child who had done nothing to antagonize anyone. Now as for you, Danzo." Minato then looked the man in his exposed eye with a glare that could match Itachi's Sharingan glare. "I would like to know the meaning of your root Enbu still being in use." "They are my personal bodyguards," Danzo replied coolly. "But we are getting off topic, Hokage-san." "That is Hokage-sama to you, Danzo," said an angry Sarutobi Hiruzen. "But I hate to agree with you in saying that we are very much getting off topic of this meeting. But before we go any further on Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, I have to inform everyone that this meeting is not about him." "Oh, then what is the meaning of the meeting then?" asked a stoic Hyuga Hiyashi. "Anbu, tell our guest that they can come in now," said Minato as he saw the Anbu nod his head and vanished. Seconds later a girl came into the room of the council as she carried herself with vigor. "We are all here to ask Uchiha Satsuki, who was formerly known as Uchiha Sasuke, to answer some questions." This had caused most of the council members shout at what was going on in questioning Satsuki. While the girl in question just sat herself down on the chair and decided to wait until the Hokage called for order. Once the entire council room became calm as Satsuki saw some of the council members look upon her with greed in their eyes. As this did not sit well with her. However, one Hyuga Hiyashi had a scowl on his face as this made the girl sigh. Now that everyone here has finally calmed down enough, I would like to ask Satsuki some questions without any interruptions, Minato said as he unleashed some killer intent into the room which made everyone nod their heads. Satsuki, I would like for you to tell the reason why you're female. My mother had placed a seal on me to protect me from my father, said Satsuki as Minato nodded his head to continue. Because my father saw that having a daughter in the Uchiha clan was just a showing sign of weakness upon himself and would kill me if he learned that I was indeed a girl. Nonsense, interrupted a fat merchant. Fugaku-sama was a good man and many times overhelped the village URK. The merchant was caught off by Minato, who appeared in front of the said man and held him by his neck. I thought I had said that I want no interruptions, growled Minato as he then punched the man in the gut as the blow knocked the wind out of the merchant. The blonde man then looked to the young Uchiha and let her continue again. As I was saying before, continued Satsuki, I know for a fact that my father was indeed a man who cared for nothing and loved only power so that he would not have to answer to no one. Because I had overheard some of the members of the police force that the Uchiha clan controlled at the time. That my father had indeed killed the elders of the clan because he refused to take orders from those weaker than him and because no one could do anything. Fugaku had used one of the laws in Konoha to keep from going to prison, which states that a clan head can use any method to run their clan without the opposition of the Hokage or council. HMPH. That is typical of the Uchiha clan since they like to steal then work for power, commented Hiyashi as he had a small smirk on his face which caused Satsuki to clench her fist. Sume saw the young Uchiha getting angry then decided to intervene. As I recall, Hiyashi, didn't you lose to Satsuki's older brother Uchiha Itachi in his test to join the Anbu ranks? Said Sume as she gave a small wink at Satsuki. And the pup did not even have his Sharingan activated at all when you were defeated too. Hiyashi glared at the Inuzuka matriarch with his Byakugan activated, which made Sume scoffed again. Please, if you're trying to intimidate me, then go back to the academy. Besides, you along with your clan are far too outdated when you only think about appearances. Enough to borderline that of Fugaku. This made the Hyuga head even more angry for a few moments then calmed down. If anyone is worried about appearances, you Inuzuka peasant, then would you like to inform us why you had exiled your own husband Inuzuka Hiroshi? Sneered Hiyashi as this made the woman want to bash the man's brains in. Enough, roared Minato as this made the two council heads sit back down as they glared at each other. Now Satsuki, I want to ask if you still want to continue being a kunoichi of Konoha and help in doing the same things you would normally be doing, along with the aid in helping to uncover the mysteries about my son's actions? I must protest, yelled Haruno Noah. We can't have the heiress of the Uchiha clan in the dangerous front lines of our shinobi. She must be protected from the outside world as well as rebuild the Uchiha clan. I must agree with Councilwoman Haruno, Hokage-sama, said Danzo. We must have her for breeding the new Uchiha clan so that Konoha's power will be back to normal. Though he just wanted to use whatever child Satsuki had to be in his rude Anbu. While Homura and Kaharu nod their head along with the civilians. Tell me this, Tsunade said as she looked lazily to the civilian council from her seat in the Senju clan. Since when was it that the civilian council had a say in either shinobi or clan matters? Asked the blonde while sitting straight up. Troublesome, Shikaku muttered. This last time you civilians got involved in such matters of shinobis was Namix Uzumaki Naruto, and look where that had gotten us. The civilians then cringed at what the Nara head said because he was right and tried to glare at the said man. While some people were plotting things for their own favor, Kushina, who was sitting in for the Namikaze clan, had looked over to Satsuki then asked. So what is your answer, Satsuki? I would like to remain a kunoichi along with helping Hokage-sama's second request. Answered Satsuki as she looked at a happy Minato. Minato then looked at everyone from his seat as Hokage. Now that this meeting is over, I bid you all a good day, said the blonde as he smirked at the scowling civilians then looked over the young Uchiha. Come with me, Satsuki, There is something I would like to talk with you about. With Naruto, Yuki no Kuni. Naruto was now staying with a girl who was eating like she had not eaten in days as she offed down food. All the while Naruto was drinking some jasmine tea while enjoying the girl's antics. In his view, Naruto saw that the girl was very poorly nourished with her body figure that was similar to his own. However, the girl then had stopped eating as she looked to be very full at the time. Then it was in that moment that the blonde had just felt her power that was very much like his own. Two which Orochimaru had now dubbed as Ryotsu, since the two felt that this power needed a name. Naruto then had a very pleased smile on his face while sipping his tea once more. I can tell that you do not have a suitable place to call home, do you? Said Naruto as he put his cup down. How did you know? Asked the girl before she looked at her own clothes and blushed with embarrassment of not noticing herself. I would like to know how your life has been up to this moment. Again Naruto asked as the girl started to play with the rim of her torn-sleeved kimono. What is there to tell? She said, then continued on. I was found by some teenagers in an abandoned house crying with no parents and lived on the streets from with other kids like myself. After the teenagers who were taking care of me passed away from some people in armor. Naruto's eyes had widened when she mentioned about people in armor. Did these armor have a symbol of yin and yang on the chest of anywhere on them? To this the girl nodded her head yes. I see, then they were killed by Kazuhana Doto's men. The girl started to shake a little bit. You mean Kazuhana Doto-sama, as in Yuki no Kuni's daimyo? Former daimyo, since he is dead now. Naruto said calmly to the girl as he saw with a look of anger and pain in her eyes. Your friends were killed by this man's minions. It was not a question but a statement as he watched the girl nod her head. Naruto had finished his tea before standing up. Are you going to stay here in Yuki no Kuni? She then shook her head. No. This place has too many memories of my friends being killed here. Naruto looked up at the clear blue sky. Do you want to be stronger where you do not have to see any you care about die again? Asked the blonde as he felt her eyes on him as he turned to his right to look at her. He then pulled out a piece of paper as he handed it to the girl as she looked at it confusingly. I would like you to hold this piece of paper in your hand and think of anything that you like. The focus that thought on this paper, said Naruto. The girl did as she was told by the blonde, then thought for a moment as she began to concentrate hard. After a few seconds of doing this, she felt her hand become a little more colder than normal. She then opened her eyes to see what was wrong with her hand. Only to see a pure white lotus made of snow sitting in her hand. This had caused Naruto to chuckle at what they were seeing in her hand. You have amazing talent, said Naruto. The girl then blushed at the praise she was getting from the blonde. Thank you. Oh, where are my manners? Naruto said as he smiled kindly. My name is Uzumaki Naruto and may I have your name? She then nodded her head. It's Rukia. Well then Rukia, Naruto said as he looked at the girl. Would you like to come with me to a place where you do not have to see any more friends die needlessly? The blonde then held his hand out to the girl for a moment before she accepted it as she took his in return. Despite his own reasonings, Naruto had felt a slight warmth inside himself when he saw her smile. However, he was not able to ponder this as he then felt 3 Ryotsus of coming from 2 people he knew and 1 he did not. There standing behind him were none other than Itachi along with Sai, who is still smiling. Then noticed a 6-year-old white-haired boy with turquoise eyes looking back at him. Itachi then walked over to his master. This boy has great Ryotsu within himself as it has the power to freeze anything within a certain range of himself. Said the Sharingan wielder. I see. Naruto replied as he walked over to the boy with his every kind smile on his face. Would it be any trouble if I can have your name? The boy looked at the blonde who seemed very nice before answering. Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya Toshiro. I am safe to assume that you have accepted an offer that Itachi has given you to join my ranks? Asked Naruto as he saw the boy nod his head in understanding. But is there anything you would like for us to do for you before take our leave of Yuki no Kuni? Please do not be hesitant to ask us of something. Toshiro looked very hesitant for a few moments as he looked in the direction of his home. If it is no trouble, I would like my grandmother to go with me, said Toshiro with a determined looks as they made Naruto laugh heartily at the boy. Very well then, Hitsugaya-kun, Naruto said as he looked to his 2 ninjas. Itachi, I want you to accompany Hitsugaya-kun back home to have arranged for his grandmother to come to our home, and Sai will return with me and Rukia. Hi. Itachi and Sai replied. 2 days later, Nami no Kuni. Satsuki had who was looking around the area of the former rundown village of Nami looking more lively. It was not long after that she entered she had came across the newly built Great Naruto Bridge, which they named after her former blonde teammate after the battling against Zabuza along with his apprentice Haku who were killed here. However, she was not here for a leisure visit as she recalled her conversation with the Hokage. Flashback. Alright Satsuki, I want to ask you something, said Minato as he along with his wife Kushina and his daughter Kimiko were standing on either side of his desk. As she stood along with the rest of the members of the rookies of their year with the addition of Sora from Fire Temple, along with Team Guy who were also called in for this meeting. Excuse me, interrupted Sakura as everyone looked at her as she blushed in embarrassment. But where is Sasuke-kun? Satsuki's right eye started to twitch as she had forgotten to tell her teammates about her ordeal. Sakura, there is now Sasuke-kun or an Uchiha Sasuke to begin with. What are you talking about? Interjected Ino as she looked at the Satsuki with a look that said stay away from Sasuke-kun look, which caused those who knew Satsuki's secret to sigh as they forgot to mention her reasons for being here now. While Kushina looked annoyed that none of the clan head had either forgot or were too busy on working with their mission to saying anything to their children. Sasuke was in the academy of our age group and the rookie of the year. So don't tell me that there is no Sasuke-kun. Kiba on the other walked over to the female Uchiha as he started to sniff her for a moment then jumped back a couple of steps. Dude, he exclaimed while pointing a finger at Satsuki. Why the hell are you in drag Sasuke and why the fuck do you smell like a girl? Oh Kami, I knew it, you are gay. Hearing this had caused the female Uchiha's blood to boil to the point to where her face was turning red, which led to Kiba to getting beat into a lumpy pulp by the female furied Satsuki. While this was going on, the male ninjas had winced at the Inuzuka being beaten by an enraged girl, all which every male ninja avoided. After a few moments of Kiba's beating by Satsuki had finally ended, in which the youngest Inuzuka had to be helped by Choji and Shikamaru who were currently holding him up to stay on his feet. Once everything had settled down in the office of Minato who just sighed to himself then chuckled at the Genins' antics. Hearing this had made the Genins stop what they were doing for the moment, as they looked at the blonde Cage grin happily that looked so much like his runaway son who left the ranks of Konoha ninjas. This had made the Genins look down at the floor because they had no longer could understand the young Namikaze. Because the events of the Bloody Ice incident felt more like a bad dream to each and every one of them. But they had to face the reality that their blonde friend had become an enemy of the Leaf with a kill on capture on site order. Minato then coughed to get the Genins' attention, which worked as he gave them an eeriest look with his hands resting under his chin. Now Satsuki, I must inform you that the council is pushing to have you taken off the shinobi ranks, so that you can be protected with Anbu until you are of age to where you can have children for the future of the Uchiha clan. What the fuck? Kiba yelled as he got everyone's attention. They can't do that to her, can they? Minato had sighed at Kiba while giving everyone a stern look. In some cases they can, he said as he closed his eyes for a moment then opened them again. And if I know Danzo along with those old crows Kaharu and Homura, they will most likely will try to make this happen. As proof that they are going to try it is Naruto himself, said a voice at the window who revealed themselves to be none other than Jiraiya the Gamma Sennin. As you people are aware that Naruto's life has been not so pleasant because the council had made everything possible for him to break him, along with other factors in his life that came to light which resulted the Bloody Ice incident. So the council has been unyouthful behind the shadows of our beautiful village, yelled Lee as his eyes burned. We must not all the council to get away with such unyouthful acts. We won't, Lee, Minato said in a reassuring voice. The look to Satsuki. Satsuki, there is more you should know about. What is it, Hokage-sama? Asked Satsuki as she was finding it to be a bit difficult to look at the blonde Cage as she could see her former teammate looking back at herself. Minato had taken a few deep breaths before looking at the girl. It seems that those Danzo, Kaharu and Homura may have some doing with the Uchiha massacre. But to what involvement, I do not know yet. But I promise you that I will do everything in my power to uncover whatever they had to do with it. So all I can do is ask you is that to be patient. The young Uchiha had clenched her fists as she had just learned that the same people that had made Naruto who he is now May have some connection to the deaths of her family, as she could only nod at Minato. Now Satsuki, can you think of any place where Naruto might have used his skill where he could not have been seen? Asked Minato. Well, I can think of one mission, replied Satsuki. End flashback. So now here she was along with the rest of the new Konoha 12 at Nami no Kuni overlooking the great Naruto bridge. She let a small smile at seeing they had named the bridge after her former teammate. As memories had filled in where she had started to fight Zabuzaza Priantis Haku on the bridge. To her she had jumped in front of the blonde to save his life, and from there she had lost consciousness from the ice senbons impaling her. While the memories of the battle kept repeating in her mind, something had finally clicked in, and it was in the moment where the mist was too thick to see anything of any kind. Along with a scent that she was not able to identify in the battle with Haku. It was here, said Satsuki, which made the rest of the genin look at her. What was here, Satsuki-chan? Asked Hinata as she walked over to the Uchiha girl. Remember what Naruto said in the Chunin finals? Said the Uchiha heiress. Ah, he said that he used his true power without being seen from another's vision. Said Shino as he looked around the area. But those of us that were not involved with the mission to wave. Do not know the mission details that only you, Kakashi-sensei and Naruto we in battle. So could you please shed some light on the mission details? Satsuki then went into details of what had happened in her battle with Haku while Kakashi fought against Zabuza. However, they again found themselves with more questions than answers on Naruto's abilities than before. Then Sakura looked at the bridge where the battle had no doubt taken place to see any replace would. Again, only this time she saw that nothing looked to be replaced or anything else that showed a fight. The pink-haired Kunoichi had then started to think that maybe they had never even fought on the bridge in the first place. Sakura's head had shot up from her thoughts as she looked over to her Junin-sensei, who nodded his head in understanding as it looked like he thought the same thing. Sakura, could you go to Tazuna's home and ask him some questions about the bridge battle? Kakashi asked while looking in the direction of where he and Naruto buried the former Kiri-nin. Okay, Kakashi-sensei, replied the pink-haired girl. Back in Konoha, Hokage's office. Minato had sighed as he sat back down in his chair after throwing the advisors to the Hokage out of his office for the 5th time again. As they were starting to become more annoying than the paperwork that plagued every Kage's life. Now he started to regret his own words about being Hokage when he was in the academy. Right now, however, it seemed like the 3 outdated fools he kicked out were trying to push him around like they did with Sandaime before he returned to the village. While he was sitting in his chair, he looked over some reports that contain his son's records on his life as a civilian. But he was then brought out of this by Kushina, who came bursting into the front door with a fire temple monk. Nina-kun, the fire temple has been destroyed, yelled Kushina as this made her husband stand up from his chair. What? Said the blonde Kage as the door opened to reveal a fire temple monk enter his office looking terrified eyes as he approached the Hokage. Kushina then walked up to the desk that is her husband's. I was walking around the village with Kimiko to get some lunch for you. When this fire temple monk had ran into us saying that the temple was attacked and the other monks were killed. While the strongest monk named Shiriku was nowhere to be found, or rather what was left of them. But the monk that had came to the village was coming back from his journey from the fire daimyo. So when he came back to the temple, he found all the monks with the exception of Chiriku dead on the ground and the temple itself destroyed. Sighs. We are going to have to call a council meeting again, said Minato as some members of the council really pissed him off. I can only guess they're going to blame this on Naruto again or something pointless. Finished Minato as he looked out the window. Well, at the very least you managed to keep Sasuke safe from those old crows, said Kushina. It may not seem like much. Minato started as he looked at the only picture of his son as it was his ninja ID. I just hope that I can do more when I find Naruto and do everything in my power to right my wrongs. With Kakashi along with his fellow Junins looked at the site of the graves, the demon of the mist with Haku on the side. That is to say, the lack of any graves as the copy nin around to see nothing there. Only to come to the conclusion that Naruto must had used a powerful genjutsu to bypass the advanced blood limit of Sharingan. I have found nothing as to look like graves, Kakashi, said Kurenai as she appeared behind the silver-haired Junin as she looked around. If he was this strong to fool Sharingan, then just how strong can his genjutsu be if he used his full power? Thought the genjutsu mistress. Throne room, with Naruto. Naruto was sitting in his marble throne as he looked at his followers who looked at him. As his new additions to his soon-to-be top fighters look at him in awe. Toshiro was wearing something that is similar to Orochimaru's outfit of wearing black with a white haori with the kanji of 10 on the back. With a Nodashi-type sword with a star-like handguard strapped to his back in a green cloth. He then looked to the girl on Toshiro's left as he smiled kindly at the two. While Toshiro was wearing similar clothes to the snake Sanin. Rukia however chose a different outfit that had a similar look to Sai's own style of clothing. But hers were that of a black long sleve shirt that opened a little below her neck and the bottom part of the sleeves had extended a few inches from her hands. While she wore skirt that was a little high above her knees with a katana strapped to her left hip. I forgot what they wear on their feet, so someone please PM me on what they wear please. I trust that you two find your new clothes to be acceptable? Naruto asked as he looked at the two from his throne. He saw Rukia bow at him in respect before Toshiro joined her. This action had made the blonde chuckle a bit when he had walked down to his two new members of his organization. Raise your heads up high so that I can see your faces properly, said the blonde in making the two look up at him as he smiled. Now that I have awakened your hidden powers, I must ask that you to be patient when you are in training with your Zanpakutos before you can go on any missions. Hi Nachuo Dono, said Rukia as she bowed at him again. I understand Naruto-sama, replied Toshiro as he slightly bowed his head. Are you going to be the one teaching us? Naruto then shook his head no for once before looking back at the new recruits. No, I have someone else in mind to teach you Kenjutsu, said Naruto as he looked to Orochimaru as the man himself then looked to one of the shadows of the throne room. Come in now, said Orochimaru as he looked off to the side and there dressed in a smiler white haori with the kanji for 4 on her back. Was a woman with long back hair braided in the front and a long ponytail. While she was dressed like the snake she had on a obi instead of a sash around her waist. The woman had light gentle blue eyes that gave her a mother-like aura about herself. This is Yuno Hana Retsu who will be teaching you Kenjutsu until it can become second nature to you. Yuno Hana then looked at the blonde as he then felt her eyes on his person. Will my husband be teaching them Kido skills? The blonde had shook his head for a moment. No, I am going to need him along with Hidan to go with me to Mizu no Kuni. However, I will have Itachi here to teach them the skills of Kido. Because I know that Itachi can bring their abilities up to speed within 3 years or 4 tops. I do not mind in teaching them Kido skills Naruto-sama. Itachi started as he was very curious on why his master wanted to go to Kirigakure. But I am curious as to why you want to go to a village that is currently plagued with civil war. Naruto had stood up from his throne as he walked past the Sharingan wielder before stopping without having to look at the teen. I wish to draw an Akatsuki nuisance out of the show to slow down their movements by a few years. Before Itachi could say anything, Orochimaru had cut him off. So you wish to get rid of Zetsu of Akatsuki to slow down their Jinchuriki hunt. A very brilliant plan, Naruto-sama. Indeed, said Naruto as he began to walk past everyone in his throne room but had stopped. But there is more to this move than one would think. Because once we lend our aid to the rebel factions of Kirigakure in their civil war, we will have gained another ally for the future when I plan to make Kaitengakure a reality as we gain strength that will exceed Konoha of 4 of the strongest nation. For this plan to work in assuring that the rebel faction are promised victory over the Mizukage Yagura who is a Jinchuriki like myself. However, letting him live would cause problems as Akatsuki will be searching for him. So you plan on unsealing the demon inside of him to let it wander about from Akatsuki? Orochimaru said as he sounded very impressed with the young Bond's plan. No, replied Naruto. I plan to seal the demon into an object that can hold the beast and uses its power as a source of nourishment, said the blonde as this caught everyone's attention to his person as he looked at the former Root Anbu who is standing against a pillar. Sai, I will need you to do an infiltration mission to Kumogakure. I want to know everything on the failed Hoiga kidnapping as I suspect that there was more than what was talked about. Hi Naruto-sama, Sai replied as he left the throne room while Naruto, Orochimaru and Hidan had left the throne room. Mizu no Kuni, campsite. Chirumi Mei was currently looking over her tired soldiers from fighting the loyal shinobis of Yagura. Despite her blood limit that seemed to work in favor for her forces. It still did not seem enough to get past the defense of the loyal ninjas as she had hoped. Though she was thankful for the former Kiri Anbu Momichi Zabuza along with his apprentice Haku to help lessen casualties. However, now she along with her force seemed to be outnumbered by Kiri Anbu with no means of escape. "Che, looks like I won't be able to stop the bloodline purge," said Mei as she scowled at the Anbu before her. Zabuza then came forth as he shouldered his sword. "I don't know about you, but I plan on talking as much as these assholes as I can." "Zabuza-sama, Mei-san," Haku said as she looked over to the two experienced Kiri ninjas. "Please escape while I draw them away from you." Zabuza then walked up to his apprentice daughter to lightly hit her head in making her look at him. "Like hell you are, Haku. If this is the ENDM then we'll go together." Mei could only smile at watching the demon of the mist as she never seen the man like this before. However, this had stopped when she felt the air become very cold to the point where her breath can be seen. This had caught her attention because it was not the time for the cold season to arrive in their country. But then she heard a faint voice coming from the darkness that sounded to be a male's voice. "Geshoku Yabareta Yumi Kajayaki," said the voice in the shadows as a faint glow a small group of Kiri Anbu in its light. Once the glow had stopped, the Anbu who were caught in the light had stopped moving. Only for them to drop to the ground without trying to keep their footing to land properly. Once the Anbu had made contact with the ground, their bodies had shattered into a million pieces on the ground like they were made of fragile glass. While the Anbu who were on the left side of the rebels found themselves to be covered in what looked like to be snakes made from shadows. Only for the Anbu to be pulled into the shadows themselves by the snakes, and all could be heard was squishing sounds, along with the cries of agony filling the cold air of the campsite. Then to the back of them a man with slick-back gray hair with a chained four-bladed scythe was killing the Anbu. The man was wearing a black high-neck cloak that was buttoned up to his upper chest, while he wore a black Anbu-style pants and sandals as he killed with much joy in his laughter. This however seemed to put Haku in so much disgust at the man's love for killing. After the Anbu had been taken care of, a figure could be seen in the shadows approaching the Kiri rebels. "It pleases me to see that you are doing just fine, Zabuza-san," said the person as he finally revealed himself to be Uzumaki Naruto. "Me and my allies here wish to lend you our strength to achieve your most noble goal." Zabuza looked at the masked blonde then grinned at him. "Well, for once I am glad to see you, Gaki." Naruto walked over to the rebel ninjas of Kirigakure with his two followers after lowering their weapons, to show that they came to help them with no ill intentions on their behalf. Though the black face mask obscured the eyes of the only living rebel faction at seeing his facial expressions, they were able to see the lining of his lips smiling kindly at them. A woman who looks to be 19 years of age stood in front of the blonde swordsman. This woman, wearing a blue altered battle kimono that is revealing her shoulders and the valley of her S. Underneath the kimono was a fishnet shirt in a similar design of the clothes outside. She wore her Kiri Hite 8 around her waist in a belt that reminded the blonde of Maida Guy. This woman also having long red hair as the bangs on her right side covered her blue eye. "I have heard so much about you from Zabuza," said the woman as she examined the blonde in front of her. "Even Haku say that she is very thankful for you in saving her master. I must say that I do believe myself to be strong," said Naruto as he looked in the back to see the girl smile at him. "I have my own ambitions to achieve in my life and do not wish for my life to end needlessly. However, I have come here with the intention to negotiate a few terms, in which will help both Kirigakure and myself in the future," said Naruto as he saw the woman raise a brow. "I assure you that it will produce great results to protect your country from being invaded, while the lands start to recover from a long-lasting war. Would you follow me to my tent to discuss your ideas?" asked the rebel leader as she saw the blonde nod his head. "By the way, my name is Terumi Mei and yours is?" "Ah, my apologies Terumi-kun," said Naruto in a kind voice before holding his hand to her. "I seem to have forgotten my manners. I am Uzumaki Naruto, Kamigakure no Sato, Sai." Sai had managed to make his way into the village of Kumo as it was very easy for him being a root Anbu under Shimura Danzo. Because once a person has begun training under the Warhawk, their lives were completely erased from the world outside the hidden base. But those that are like Sai himself were a different case. as he was raised in the hidden grounds of Root and knew no other person except for on person. He had then looked out the window of his hotel room as he saw that it was night time. He then took out a scroll out from his bag as he took out some ink along with a paint brush and started to draw 12 black rats on the paper. Sai did a single hand seal before making the black rats come out of the paper to jump on the floor in front of him. He then gave an order to his creations to infiltrate the Raikage's office through any means they could find. Sai then decided to leave his room to explore the village that is Kumogakure. However, he seemed to find the place pretty boring because people were almost the same in any hidden village. But just then he heard the shouts of people who sounded to be a bit angry. This caught his interest as he walked over to the angry shouts. Only to hear the words of "demon whore" or "demon flip" that made his smile falter a little. There stood a light long blonde-haired girl at the age of 17 wearing black shinobi pants with matching sandals. On her waist is a red sash tied as a belt and a gray waist armor over a black skin-tight shirt. This girl did nothing as she allowed the people to throw random objects at her person. Sai watched everything from the side as he also saw the ninjas were also throwing things and calling her the most degrading names anyone could think of. Having enough of seeing this, Sai was about to make his way through the crowd, when a hand stopped him from going further to help the girl. He then turned his attention to the person. Sai came face to face with another light blonde-haired woman who has shoulder-length hair and blue eyes that reminded him of a picture of Yamanaka Inoichi. The woman looked to be the same age as the female Jinchuriki of Kumo. Too lazy to describe these people now, sorry. I wouldn't try to help her if I were you, said the blonde as she gave him a serious look on her face. She is a Jinchuriki, a creature that is not human. The former rude Anbu did not even give the blonde a second glance. Is that so? Said Sai as he looked at the girl. From what I can see, she is bleeding like a human, and from the looks of her, she is having feelings of anger like a human. I must say that is an interesting take on the subject, said the blonde woman with an impressive bustline. To the Sai's smile got a little wider for a moment. But I do wonder who is the true monster, said the former rude Anbu as he walked into the crowd and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear him. The one who is accused of being a monster, or the ones who inflict as much damage on the person? I can only guess what you people have been doing to this woman when she was not able to defend themselves. What would you know, you demon lover? Demanded a villager. This time Sai took his smile down from his face. I can assure that I can think of what people like you have done, he said in a dangerous tone of voice. You people most likely hunted her down like an animal for sport, and once you have captured her, you would do anything to make sure that her place at your own feet, he said as he took a look back to see the woman not liking being in a crowd. And I can assume what you men do to her, as I can clearly see that she is frightened by being surrounded by men from the way she is holding on to herself. To this, some of the men had flinched at the words of Sai because they suspected at what he guessed up in his head, while a few just seemed to grin at the notion of remembering the memory on what they did. While at the same time, the long-haired blonde looked down at her feet. Once the former rude Anbu said his words, he turned around and left the crowd with some people and 4 ninjas to think for themselves. Training area. With Itachi and Hana 4 days later. Hana Retsu had started to watch the 2 no students form in Kenjutsu as she walked over to Toshiro. You are doing great for only a few days, Hitsugaya-kun, said Hana while smiling at white-haired boy, then walked over to Itachi. Do you think that these 2 will be ready for their Kido training, Itachi? She asked. It depends on how they want progress, replied Itachi as he did not take his eyes off the students. However, Toshiro-san is showing great results after a few days. It is most likely that he is venting out his sleeping power through our teachings and shows great control with his swordsmanship, said the eldest Uchiha as he averted his gaze on Rukia. But I would like to have Rukia-san come with me to prepare her Kido training. Hana then raised an eyebrow at the teen beside her. Do you not think that it is too early for her to start your training? She asked as she saw Itachi shook his head. No, I merely wish to see if my suspicions on training Kido skills will help speed our objectives, replied Itachi as he did not even turn his Sharingan gaze into the woman's eyes. I see your point, she said as she walked ahead a good 5 feet as she called out Rukia. Rukia-san, would you come over here? Rukia then stopped her training with her Bokuten, then sped over to the 2 older people. Am I doing something wrong, Hana-sensei? To this the woman shook her head as she smiled at the former homeless girl. "No, in fact this regards to your training," said Hana as she looked Rukia. "Itachi-san wants to start your Kido training ahead of schedule." Konoha. Council room. Shimura Danzo sat at the head of the civilian council chamber with Sortobi's two advisors with the civilians. "We have let the situation regarding the demon go on long enough, Hokage-sama," said Danzo as the civilian council members nod their heads. "Because of your close ties to the demon, I have gone over your head and reported to the fire daimyo about the demon, and I hope you will listen to reason in sending hunter nins after it. Because he had grown far too powerful to be left alive." To this Minato did not even give one response as he kept a calm face. "Did I hear you just right, Danzo?" said Yondaime as he rested his head on his hands. "That you have done something behind the Hokage's back, and knowing that you are treading on enough waters to label you along with those two fossils traitors. Because if that is so, then I have enough authority to have you executed." Hearing this, Danzo did not even register the threat of his life being in danger as he let out a small laugh. "I believe that my actions will be justified when the fire daimyo hears my side on recent events," smirked the Warhawk. "You have been away from the village along with your family to grasp any glimpse in what that boy is planning, and I believe that fault lies with you on those grounds." Minato then gritted his teeth as he knew that Danzo hit the nail on the head. Because of his own ignorance in believing that the people he had fought to protect would honor his wish. But what he had not factored in was that the pain in the Kyuubi's attack was a day of great pain in the Hidden Leaf village. While he lived happily with his wife in training their daughter away from the enemy's eyes, their son was left behind to suffer the wrath of people who were filled with nothing but hate. At times when he walked around the village by himself, he could actually hear the cries of his son begging for help that went on unheard. Minato then started to stay in Naruto's old apartment as he began to see that a boy who would cry from nightmares would never have the comfort of their parents. In all this, he could only think of one thing. "What have I done? Do all you agree with him?" asked Minato, whose voice is laced with untold anger as he saw the civilian council nod their heads. While the shinobi faction disagreed with Danzo, while most of them as Hyuga Hiyashi did not even give an answer, which made the older blonde curious as to why. I decided to change the daimyo looks for this FIC, and I have a pic of them in my profile." Just as Minato was going to ask on where the Hyuga clan head stood on the situation, the door to the council room just opened and there stood a man with long black hair, who has his hair tied elegantly in a ponytail as he is wearing very regal type of clothes, and beside him was a woman with the similar type robes as the man who came into the council room. These people that came into the council room are in fact the daimyo of Hai no Kuni, by the name of Daichi Hikaru and his wife Kyoe. The ruling couple then made their way over to a seat that was arranged for them by the council. Hikaru then waited for his wife to take her place beside him, which did not take long. He then turned his head to look at everyone who was present in the room as they all bowed their heads in respect, as he did the same in showing his respect to the people he ruled. "I was informed by Shimura Danzo that something has been going on amiss in my lands," spoke Hikaru as his eyes fell on Minato as he smiled at the blonde-haired man. "Well, I must say that this is a very joyous visit, because I was told that you had passed away in the Kyuubi attack. I am sorry to have deceived you," Minato began, but was cut off by Danzo. "Do forgive me, daimyo-sama," spoke Danzo as he grew a bit annoyed. "But this meeting involves Yondaime Hokage, Namekaze Minato, and his incompetence that lead to the bloody ice incident." Hikaru then looked at the War Hawk for a moment with confusion. "Yes, I heard about the bloody ice incident, Danzo-san, and I do not understand how Minato-san is responsible for it." The ruling couple began to listen to what Danzo said on what he could gather from Minato's actions concerning the runaway Jinchuriki. The daimyo looked shocked at the older blonde and grew even more shocked when they found out that the man's own son was the one who is responsible for the bloody ice incident. "Is this true, Minato-san?" asked Hikaru, who looked at the Kiroi Senku as he saw the man look down in shame. "So you have left your only child to a pack of wolves," spoke Kyoe as she looked at the blonde man with anger. "I cannot believe a man as gifted as you would do such a thing. I must say that I am very disappointed in you and find myself agreeing with Danzo-san," she said as she saw the man let out a pleased smile. "May I be allowed to speak?" finally spoke Hiyashi as he caught everyone's attention. To this Hikaru nodded his head for a moment. Yes, you may Hiyashi Dono. Thank you Daimyu-sama, said the Hyuga head. I know that this is not in my place on placing the blame on anyone. But I find that everyone from the civilian council to the elders including Sandaime Hokage who are at fault. This caused everyone to yell at the Hyuga head because of his words. Would you care to explain why you believe this to be? Asked Kiyoi as she was very eager to know why. I generally believe that if we were told that Uzumaki Naruto was in fact Yondaime's son. He began as he kept a calm face. That there would not have been a bloody ice incident. Because out of fear of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the civilians along with the elders made it possible for Naruto live like any normal boy. By raising their price on food when he went to buy food at the stores that would allow him to shop. While most would not allow him to stay inside their establishments and was forced to eat at any food stands that allowed him to eat. If Sandaime had informed the clan heads of the boy's true lineage, then I am sure that we would have taken better care of the boy within our homes, than living on his own in apartment. I thought it would be best that Naruto would be well protected if he kept his mother's name, instead of his father. Defended Sarutobi as he did not think he was at fault. I was planning on telling Naruto. When he either turned 16 or became a Chunin. I seriously doubt that he would be able to make Chunin. Argued Hiyashi as he looked at the retired Hokage. I know very well that the teacher of the academy did all they could to stunt the boy's growth and they have failed in their attempts. Which was proved in the bloody ice incident as he has indeed grown far too strong under everyone's sight. There was in fact only one among the teachers who did all he could to help Yondaime's son. Who? Asked Hikaru. Amino Iruka, replied Hiyashi. He is an academy teacher who then looked past the boy's condition. This has no relevance to our current matter Hyuga, snapped Danzo as he grew irritated. I have called the meeting to have our daimyo to approve our choice to put the demon on the bingo book. My son is not a demon you old crow, roared Minato as he wanted to jump from his seat and slit the warhawk's throat. But could not do anything in the presence of the daimyo. Silence, yelled Hikaru as he got everyone's attention as he looked over to Minato. Could you have an Anbu bring this Amino Iruka to the council chambers right away? At once, Minato said as he motioned for Anbu who is guarding the door as he vanished via Shunshin. After waiting for about 10 minutes, the Anbu appeared with Iruka who looked very nervous. I was told that I was needed here, said Iruka as he looked at everyone. Hikaru then smiled at the Chunin to relax the man. You are in no trouble here, Amino Iruka, said the daimyo. I just want to have some questions answered that only you have the answers to. Well if you say so, said Iruka as he is indeed very nervous. Kiyoi then looked at the Chunin for a moment as she looked to her husband. In your personal opinion, she began, what are your thoughts on one Uzumaki Naruto? Before the bloody ice incident? Well, Iruka began, Mizu no Kuni, with the rebel faction. Orochimaru watched the loyal Kiri nins closing on his location as he raised his katana. That had a bunch coiling snakes made out of diamond as a handguard with their mouths open and looked like they were trying to devour each other. Before he stabbed the entire blade of the sword on the ground as the Kiri nins surrounded him. It seems that your skills at a Sannin were greatly overrated Orochimaru, said a Kiri nin as he along with a few others getting ready to attack the man. At least that was going to happen when the branches of the trees took a hold of enemy ninjas. Orochimaru did not move as the ninjas began to struggle to get free from their bindings. Overrated you say, taunted the snake Sannin as he smiled a little bite. My Zanpakuto is a rather interesting Waruji Amatsuatome, serpent wisdom, celestial maiden, said Orochimaru, because it allows me to take the environment and use it however I wanted to. Just like a snake, I can strike at lightning speeds. Again however, I am not going to allow any of you to report this information to anyone else, so. Elsewhere with Naruto. The rebel faction heard the screams of people in the distance as Naruto looked to Hidan for a moment. As the former Akatsuki member just yawned out of being bored for not fighting anyone. It seems like Orochimaru had completed his mission, said Naruto as he got up from his chair. All we need to do is wait for him to return. Naruto-kun, said a female voice to his left as he saw Haku along with Zabuza. Is there something that is troubling you? Naruto asked kindly as he saw the two rebel members shake their heads no. To this Naruto let out a chuckle at the girl's expense. If that were true, then you would not have come here to speak with me. To this Haku stepped up to the masked blonde who raised a brow to the demon of the mist. We want to know what you said to Mei. That made her accept your offer. To this Naruto then waved the two former missing nins come closer as he whispered something in their ears. While Hidan just grinned at their shocked reactions of the blonde's negotiation. I hope that it is enough to set your minds at ease. After waiting 30 minutes, Orochimaru made his appearance along with a few loyal Kiri nins behind him. To this Naruto peeked into Mei's tent as he saw the woman reading a map. He has returned. Alright, replied Mei as she got up from her chair and walked outside to see everyone gathered together. Naruto though walked up to the snake Sannin with Mei to see the man grinning. I trust that you have completed your mission objective and these people are. Hi, Naruto-sama, replied Orochimaru as he licked his lips, then looked to Mei. It is time to use the hidden poison strategy. To this Mei nodded her head in understanding what the snake Sannin said as she turned to her followers. Hear this everyone, she called out as all the rebel nins looked at her. Our battle will finally be coming to an end, where those of us no longer need to live in fear anymore. Because with this plan that our new allies have given me, victory will be assured and we can begin a new era. Now I need everyone here to fight with everything you have in your body. So that we can finally achieve peace. To this Naruto let out a small pleased grin on his face as his plan was to have allies had become a reality. Such foolishness. But they will prove to be the shield in the future. He thought then looked to Hidan as the man nudged him for a moment. The masking weed among the flowers finally sprouted from the ground. Kiri's Jinchuriki will prove to be of some use to me, since he is most like the one to be spied on at the moment. Time skip. Kiri, with Naruto and Utakata. Naruto then looked around the area as he found himself to be alone with the Rokubi Jinchuriki. However, what the two did not know was that they were being watched from the shadows. There are two Jinchurikis here, said the white half, but that is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki that Itachi reported described, replied the black half in his gruff voice. What is the Konoha Jinchuriki doing in Kiri? What are they doing? Naruto then brought his sword up to show Utakata as he looked confused. But Zetsu kept watching the exchange between the two as he could not entirely listen in without giving away his position. However, he then saw the masked blonde had changed the form of his sword as the blade turned snow white and having shards of blue ice spinning around the blade. The planned Akatsuki member then became interested in what the two Jinchurikis were doing at the moment. As a few shards shot out into the air and shattering into a very light mist. Zetsu then came to the conclusion that the blonde's sword has a water-type element to conceal himself from his enemies. Seeing this, the Akatsuki member decided to go report back to his leader on his new discovery. It really is poor manners to spy on someone, said a voice from behind as the plant man turned around to see the masked blonde look at him with cruel-looking eyes. Zetsu of Akatsuki, you will be the first to fall in your group. Because you are too much an annoyance to be overlooked. The white side of Zetsu had split himself from the black half as he jumped at the blonde before looking back to his other half. You must report back to Leader Sama. I am that I cannot allow that, said Naruto as he stabbed the white half of Zetsu in the heart. Gah, said the black hauled as he could not understand why he is feeling pain. But how? He said as he looked down at his chest as his eyes widened at what he saw. I separated. What did you do? Demanded the white half as he saw that the bond did not answer him. Tell me, you fucking bra. The black half did not get to finish what he was going to say as his body shattered into countless shards of ice. A dead man has no right to have answers, said Naruto as he walked back to the rebel camp. Now Akatsuki, what will be your next move in this little game of yours? With the loss of your most important piece on your game board?